Please, help me. I don't know who else to ask. The words came out broken, barely above a whisper from a young man on his knees clutching something hidden inside a filthy torn jacket, pressing it against his chest like it was the last thing keeping him alive. 300 Hell's Angels stood frozen. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because in 30 years of riding these highways, not one of them had ever seen anything like this. And when they finally saw what he was hiding, every single one of them stopped breathing. If this story moves you, hit subscribe, drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. The Nevada summer doesn't ask permission. It just arrives heavy, relentless, pressing down on everything that dares to exist under it. The asphalt on Route 93 had been baking since 5 in the morning, and by the time the sun climbed to the top of the sky, the air above the highway shimmered and bent like something alive, something angry. It was the kind of heat that makes a person question every decision they've ever made. And yet, despite that heat, despite that emptiness, the old Rattlesnake Junction gas station, a faded sun-bleached building that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in 30 years, was anything but quiet. Because the Hells Angels were here. Not 10 of them, not 20, 300. Their motorcycles stretched in every direction, filling the parking lot, lining both sides of the highway, gleaming chrome and black leather baking in the Nevada sun. The sound of 300 engines cooling, that steady metallic ticking, sounded almost like rain if you closed your eyes and tried hard enough. This was their annual charity run. Every year, the same route. Every year, the same stop. The gas station had become something of a tradition. A midway point where they filled their tanks, stretched their legs, bought bad coffee in styrofoam cups, and reminded themselves why they made this ride every summer. To raise money, to help kids in hospitals, to do the thing that nobody expected men like them to do. But none of that mattered in about 30 seconds. Because something was about to happen that would change everything about that afternoon. Caleb Walker was leaning against his bike, holding a coffee cup that had long gone cold when he first noticed the shape at the edge of the road. He almost missed it. He almost looked away, but something made him keep watching. It was a figure human, moving, stumbling out of the desert scrub that bordered the highway, maybe 200 yards east of the gas station. The figure was running, but running the way people run when they have almost nothing left. Lurching, catching themselves, pushing forward on sheer desperation. Caleb set down his coffee. At 48, Caleb Walker had lived through enough to recognize the difference between a man moving towards something and a man moving away from something terrible. He'd learned that difference on the road in rooms he didn't talk about, in moments he carried quietly inside his chest like stones. This man was running away. "Hey," Caleb said quietly. He nudged the rider beside him, a big, broad-shouldered man named Danny, who everyone called Brick because of obvious reasons. "You see that?" Brick squinted. "See what coming from the east, on foot." Brick found the figure. He went still. "How far you think he came?" "I don't know," Caleb said, "but look at him." By now, a few others had noticed. One by one, heads turned. Conversations died. That slow ripple of attention moved through 300 people like a wave until the entire gas station was watching the same thing. A young man barely holding together, running toward them across the desert. His shirt was torn down one side. His face, even at this distance, showed the dark bloom of bruising around one eye and along his jaw. His jeans were shredded at both knees, stained with dried blood and red desert dirt. And he was clutching something against his chest, with both arms holding whatever it was in his jacket pressed tight, like someone trying to keep a wound from bleeding out. He hit the edge of the parking lot and his legs gave out, just buckled, completely, like the strings holding him upright were cut all at once. He went down hard on both knees, and the sound of it, that sharp crack against the concrete, was loud enough that Caleb heard it from 30 feet away. Caleb was already moving. He reached the young man in seconds, crouching down, hands out, careful and steady, the way you approach something that might bolt or might break. Hey, look at me." Caleb kept his voice low, steady, the voice he used when everything else was loud. "Look at me, son." The young man lifted his head. I was maybe 22, blue eyes bloodshot and glassy from the sun and from crying, or maybe from not sleeping, or maybe from all three at once. His blonde hair was soaked through with sweat and plastered to his forehead. His lips were cracked and pale from dehydration. And across his jaw, spreading toward his cheekbone, was a bruise that had turned the specific color of a storm cloud, dark purple edged in green. That didn't come from a fall. Caleb had seen enough bruises in his lifetime to know the difference between the ones the ground gave you and the ones a person gave you. Someone had hit this kid, recently, and more than once. "Please," the young man rasped. His voice was wrecked dry and stripped down to almost nothing. "Please help me. I don't know who else to ask." Behind Caleb, 300 people stood in absolute silence. No engine noise, no conversation, no movement. Just that young man on his knees and those words hanging in the heat. Caleb put one hand on the young man's shoulder, steady, anchoring. "You're okay," Caleb said. "You're okay right now. Nobody's going to hurt you here." He glanced back at the crowd, one single look that communicated everything it needed to, and then turned back. "Can you tell me your name?" The young man's jaw worked for a moment. "Noah," he finally managed. "Noah Bennett." "All right, Noah." Caleb kept his hand on Noah's shoulder. "I'm Caleb. You're safe. Now can you tell me what happened?" Noah opened his mouth, closed it. His arms tightened around whatever he was holding inside that jacket, pressing it harder against his chest. And for the first time, Caleb saw it clearly, that whatever he was carrying was moving. Every instinct in that gas station sharpened at once. You could feel it, that particular shift in the air, when a crowd of people all have the same thought at the same moment. Caleb felt it at his back like a change in weather, because 300 Hells Angels had just watched a bruised, desperate stranger collapse in their parking lot, and whatever he was hiding under that jacket was moving, and every single one of them was now doing the rapid, complicated math of deciding what that meant. Trouble. That was the first word in a lot of minds. Trouble had a way of finding these stops, finding these gatherings, showing up at the worst possible moments, wearing a face that asked for mercy while hiding something else entirely. Caleb felt the tension. He acknowledged it. He didn't dismiss it, but he also looked at Noah Bennett's eyes. And what Caleb Walker saw there in 30 years of reading people in high-pressure moments was not the calculation of someone running a con. It was not the controlled panic of someone managing a lie. It was just fear, raw, pure animal fear, the kind that strips everything else away, the kind you cannot fake because it goes all the way down to the bone. "Noah," Caleb kept his voice exactly level. "I need you to tell me what you're carrying." Noah looked down at his jacket. Then he looked up at Caleb. "Promise me you won't take her away from me," Noah said. "Please, she's all I've got right now. She's the only reason I kept moving." Caleb held his gaze for a long, still moment. "Show me," Caleb said. Noah Bennett opened his jacket, and the entire parking lot of the Rattlesnake Junction gas station, 300 Hells Angels, some of the most hardened, most road-worn, most genuinely intimidating human beings in the American Southwest, went completely silent in a way that was entirely different from the silence before. This was not the silence of tension. This was the silence of something catching in the chest, something unexpected, something that reached past every defense a person had built and found the soft part underneath. Inside Noah's jacket, curled against his body, held warm by the heat of his skin, through miles of desert walking, was a puppy. Small, so small it fit in both of Noah's palms with room to spare. Its fur was matted with dirt, and something darker blood dried and flaking along one back leg. Its eyes were closed. Its chest rose and fell in the shallow, rapid rhythm of something that was still hanging on, but only barely. But it was alive. It was alive because Noah Bennett, walking miles through the Nevada desert with a bruised face and torn clothes, with his mother stranded somewhere and no phone and no money and no way to call for help, had heard something, had stopped, had reached down, and had not walked away. "I found her about 4 miles back," Noah said. His voice had gone quiet in the way voices do when a person is talking about something they're not sure anyone will understand. "She was in a ditch by the road. I don't know how she got there. I almost didn't hear her." He looked down at the puppy in his arms. She was so quiet, like she'd already stopped hoping anyone was coming. Nobody spoke. Caleb Walker looked at the puppy in Noah's hands. He looked at Noah's face. He looked at the bruise along the young man's jaw and the cracked lips and the bloodshot eyes and the way this kid, this 22-year-old, who had walked 4 miles through one of the most punishing environments in the American West, was holding that injured animal with the same care you'd give something irreplaceable. Something in Caleb's chest moved. Something that had been very still for a very long time. "Okay," Caleb said quietly. "Okay, Noah." He stood. He turned to face the crowd. "I need water. I need someone who knows animals. And I need somebody to get this kid something to eat before he passes out." 300 people moved. Shukran. It happened the way things happen in a group of people who share something essential, that unspoken, immediate understanding that doesn't require discussion or leadership. Someone pressed a water bottle into Noah's hands before he could ask. Someone else opened a protein bar and set it beside him without a word. A woman named Jeannie, who had 20 years of veterinary experience before she took to the road, was already kneeling beside Noah and reaching for the puppy with the confident, careful hands of someone who knew exactly how to hold something fragile. "Let me see her," Jeannie said. "I won't hurt her. Let me see." Noah watched Jeannie's face as she examined the puppy. He was reading her the way frightened people read doctors, looking for the moment the expression changes, looking for the telltale flicker of something bad. Jeannie looked up at Noah. "She's dehydrated. The leg is injured, but I don't think it's broken. She needs fluids and she needs rest." Jeannie paused. "But she's a fighter. You can feel it." Noah let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for 4 miles. "Okay," he said. "Okay." Caleb crouched back down in front of Noah. "Now," he said, "I need you to tell me everything. Start from the beginning." And Noah Bennett, sitting on the concrete of a Nevada gas station parking lot, surrounded by 300 strangers, he had spent his whole life being told to fear, told Caleb Walker everything. His name was Noah Bennett, and he was 22 years old, and 6 months ago his world had come apart in the specific grinding way that financial ruin comes apart. Not all at once, but piece by piece, the way erosion works. His father, Thomas Bennett, had died 18 months earlier. Heart attack. Quick, the doctor said, like that was supposed to be comforting. Thomas Bennett had been a mechanic in a small Colorado town, and he had been good at it, and he had been honest, which meant he had never been rich. When he died, he left behind a house that was mortgaged, a truck that needed work, a small amount in saving, and a journal. The house went back to the bank within 6 months. The savings went to the medical bills and the funeral costs. What remained was the truck, the journal, and Noah's mother, Rachel. Rachel Bennett was 51 years old and had been diagnosed with a heart condition 18 months ago, around the time her husband died, which Noah said the doctors called stress-induced. She needed medication, regular medication, the kind that required a prescription and a pharmacy and money they increasingly did not have. They had decided together, him and his mother, at the kitchen table of the apartment they could barely afford to drive from Colorado to Rachel's sister in Las Vegas, who had room and could help. It made sense on paper. On paper it was a plan. But plans meet the road, and the road does what it wants. The truck broke down 90 miles outside of Las Vegas on a stretch of Route 93 that had no phone signal and no shade and no help for as far as the eye could reach in any direction. Rachel was in the truck. Rachel had her medication, but not enough, 3 days worth left, 4 if she was careful, and she was already feeling the heat and already frightened. And Noah had told her to stay in the truck, stay in the shade. He would walk until he found signal or found help. He had been walking for almost 2 hours. He had found neither. What he had found in a dry gully beside the road was a sound so small he almost convinced himself he imagined it. "I stopped," Noah said. He was looking at his hands now, at the empty space where the puppy had been before Jeannie took her. "I stood there and I thought, I don't have time. My mom is back there. I don't have time to stop." He looked up at Caleb. "But my dad," he stopped, pressed his lips together for a moment. "My dad used to say something. He wrote it down once in that journal he kept." Noah reached into his jacket, the same jacket, the one he'd wrapped the puppy in, and brought out a small, worn notebook. The cover was dirty and the edges were soft from years of being carried. He held it, but he didn't open it. He seemed to know the words by memory. He wrote, "The world has enough people who walk away. Be the person who stops." The gas station was very quiet. Heat pressed down on everything. Noah set the journal on his knee. "So I stopped," he said simply, "and I found her." Caleb looked at the journal. He looked at Noah. He thought about a lot of things, and none of them were the kinds of things he would have said out loud. Not in that moment, not in that parking lot with 300 people listening. "How far back is your truck?" Caleb asked. Maybe 4 miles, 4.5 east on the highway. You can't miss it. It's the only truck. Noah's voice caught slightly. My mom's in it. She's okay, I think, but she's been out there for 2 hours now, and the heat. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Caleb was already on his feet. What happened next was the thing that people who weren't there would later find difficult to believe no matter how many times Noah tried to describe it. Caleb Walker turned to face his riders. He didn't use a microphone. He didn't need to. His voice carried in that particular way that voices carry when they are completely certain of what they are saying. There's a woman stranded on the highway 4 miles east, Caleb said. Broken down truck, no phone signal, heart condition, limited medication. We move now. That was it. That was the entire speech. And before the last word had finished leaving his mouth, things were already in motion. Marcus, retired paramedic, 17 years on the road, who kept a kit strapped to his bike, because old habits don't die. Just because you stop working was already starting his engine. 2 riders pulled alongside him without being asked because that's how Marcus moved, and everyone knew it. Danny, who they called Brick, who had been a professional mechanic for 22 years before his knees gave out, was asking Noah rapid-fire questions about the truck. What year, what make, what it sounded like when it died, whether the engine had been running hot. Danny was running through possibilities in his head, the way he always did, building the solution before he even saw the problem. And back in the parking lot, Jeannie was setting up a small, careful space, a folded jacket, a bowl of clean water, steady hands working on the puppy with the focused quiet of someone who had done this kind of work 1,000 times and never once found it routine. Noah Bennett sat and watched all of this. He watched 300 strangers he had spent his whole life being told to fear, to cross the street, to avoid, to give wide berth, become in the space of 60 seconds the most organized, most purposeful rescue operation he had ever seen. He didn't know what to do with that, so he did the only thing he could. He started crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, the way people cry when they have been holding something for so long that the moment it becomes possible to let go, the body does it without asking permission. Caleb was still there. He crouched down in front of Noah again because he'd noticed and because it mattered. Hey, Caleb said. Noah scrubbed his face with the back of his hand. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm not usually. You walked 4 miles in Nevada's summer heat with a bruised face and an injured puppy to find help for your mother, Caleb said, and his voice was entirely matter-of-fact about it. You're allowed. Noah laughed, a short, wet, involuntary thing. I don't even know why you're helping me. Caleb looked at him steadily. Same reason you stopped for the puppy. Noah went quiet. He looked at the journal on his knee. My dad wrote that when I was 14, Noah said. I didn't really understand it then. I thought it was just something dads say. He traced the cover with one finger. He died before I figured out he meant it. Caleb didn't say anything for a moment. He just sat with that the way certain things deserve to be sat with. What was his name? Caleb asked. Thomas, Noah said. Thomas Bennett. He was a mechanic like me. He almost smiled. He used to say the best thing you could do for your car was pay attention to it before it started screaming at you. He said people were the same way. He sounds like a smart man. I was the best man I ever knew, Noah said very simply. And I've been trying to figure out ever since he died if it still makes sense to be like him, to stop for things. Because sometimes he exhaled. Sometimes it seems like nobody else is stopping. And you start to wonder if you're the only one left who thinks it matters. Caleb Walker, who had not talked about his son in 3 years, felt something in his chest pull tight. He said nothing, but he didn't look away. Marcus found Rachel Bennett exactly where Noah said she would be. A faded blue pickup, hazards still blinking, even though they'd been going for 2 hours, pulled half off the road onto the gravel shoulder. He saw her through the windshield before he'd even stopped his bike. 60-something, he thought at first, then corrected himself, 50 maybe, but fear and heat and worry had a way of adding years. She was in the passenger seat with the window cracked, fanning herself with what looked like a folded piece of paper, and the expression on her face when she saw the motorcycles pull up was the specific expression of a person who is trying very hard to remain calm while their body is doing everything it can to override that decision. Marcus left his bike running and walked up with his hands visible, which he always did because it mattered. Mrs. Bennett, he called out. She rolled the window down the rest of the way. Yes. And then immediately, is Noah okay? Is my son? Your son is fine, Marcus said. He's at the gas station. He found help. He paused at the window. I'm Marcus. I'm a paramedic retired, but I still know what I'm doing. Can I check on you? Rachel Bennett looked at the line of motorcycles that had pulled up behind Marcus. She looked at Marcus. She said, how many of you are there? About 300, Marcus said. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she said, my son must have been very convincing. Marcus smiled. He didn't have to be. Danny arrived at the truck 11 minutes after Marcus with two other riders and a set of tools that could have rebuilt most of the engine from scratch. He circled the truck once listening. He put his hand on the hood. He asked Rachel, who had come out of the truck, now sitting on a folded blanket, in what shade the truck's shadow offered with Marcus, keeping steady eyes on her color and pulse, whether the engine had made any specific noise before it stopped. Like a knocking, Rachel said. Sort of a knocking and then a grinding and then nothing. Danny, he'd already been 90% certain before she said it. All right, he said. Give me an hour. An hour, one of the other riders said. 45 minutes, Danny corrected himself, already reaching for his tools. If the part I think it is the part I think it is. It was the part he thought it was, and it took him 41 minutes. Back at the gas station, Noah was on his second bottle of water and something approaching a stable emotional state when Caleb came to sit beside him again. The puppy, resting, now quiet and slightly less alarming in her stillness, was in Jeannie's careful custody nearby. The shallow, rapid breathing had slowed a little. The small chest rose and fell with more steadiness than before. She's going to make it, I think, Jeannie had told Noah 20 minutes earlier. She's got a stubborn streak. I can feel it. Noah had said she does. She absolutely does. Now, in the relative quiet, relative being the word, because there were still 300 people and 300 cooling bikes and the entire and noise of a small city's worth of humanity in one parking lot, Noah turned the journal over in his hands and said to Caleb, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Are you always like this? Noah said. He gestured vaguely at the general everything. Is this what you do? Caleb tilted his head slightly. What do you mean? I mean, Noah struggled for the words. I grew up hearing things. He looked at the crowd around them. About groups like this. About what you were capable of. He met Caleb's eyes. I was scared of you. When I was running toward the way station, I was scared. I thought maybe I should find somewhere else. Maybe I should keep going. Caleb let him talk. But there wasn't anywhere else, Noah said. So I came, and I thought best case you ignore me. Worst case, he stopped. I don't know what I thought, but I was scared. That's reasonable, Caleb said. Noah blinked. I'm not offended, Caleb said. He clasped his hands between his knees and looked out at the highway. We have a reputation. Some of it is earned, some of it isn't. That's true of most things. He was quiet for a moment. What I've learned after all these years is that people decide who you are before you open your mouth. And the only thing you can do about that is keep showing up and doing the right thing anyway. He paused. Your dad knew that, sounds like. Yeah, Noah said softly. Yeah, he did. Then maybe he would have been okay with you being scared, Caleb said. As long as you kept walking anyway. Noah looked at him for a long moment. He would have liked you, Noah said. Caleb looked away, back at the highway, at the empty stretch of road that led east toward where Marcus and Danny were working on a broken truck in the midday heat. My son was about your age, Caleb said. He said it very quietly. He said it in the specific way that people say things they have not said out loud in a very long time, carefully, like the words have sharp edges and must be handled with care. Noah went still. He's gone, Caleb said, simply, not asking for anything, just acknowledging it the way a person acknowledges weather. 3 years ago, different highway, different state. He paused. No good reason. Those are the worst kind. I'm sorry, Noah said, and he meant it in the full undecorated way that honest people mean it without trying to fix it, without trying to make it smaller. Just receiving it, acknowledging that it was real and that it mattered. Caleb nodded once. After it happened, Caleb said slowly, I stopped. Not the way your dad meant. The other kind of stopping. I pulled back from things, from people, from caring too much about anything that could be taken away. He turned the cold coffee cup in his hands. It's easier, you think, not to care. You think it protects you. Does it? Noah asked, No, Caleb said. It just makes you empty instead of sad. And empty is worse. The highway shimmered in the heat between them. You know what made me start again, Caleb said. Coming out here, every summer, seeing this, he gestured at the crowd at the riders at the whole improbable gathering. Watching people who everyone wrote off turn around and do something that matters. It reminded me that caring wasn't what got me hurt. Losing him was what hurt me. Those are two different things. Noah held the journal in both hands. He opened it, found the page worn soft, read 1,000 times, and read the words that his father had written when Noah was 14 years old. Words that had seemed like just something Dad'd say until the day they became the reason he stopped in the middle of the desert and reached into a ditch. The world has enough people who walk away. Be the person who stops. He held it out to Caleb. Caleb read it. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, "Your dad was a wise man." "I was just a mechanic," Noah said. "Those aren't mutually exclusive," Caleb said. And despite everything, the heat, the fear, the exhaustion, the bruised face and cracked lips, and the 2 hours of desert walking, Noah Bennett laughed. 41 minutes after Danny arrived at the stranded truck, a single motorcycle pulled into the gas station parking lot. Marcus. He came to a stop near Caleb and cut his engine. He looked at Noah. "Your mother is fine," he said. "Good pulse, color is normal. She's stubborn as hell for what it's worth. She kept trying to help Danny with the truck." Noah closed his eyes briefly. "Danny has it," Caleb asked. "Danny has it," Marcus confirmed. "They're coming in about 15 minutes. And then Marcus looked at Noah, looked at this young man who had walked 4 miles through Nevada's summer heat with a bruised face and a dying puppy, and a dead man's journal, who had run toward 300 strangers because there was nowhere else to go. And Marcus, who had spent 17 years as a paramedic and had seen more desperation and more courage than most people see in a lifetime, said simply, "Your mom is really proud of you, kid." Noah's face did something complicated, something that wasn't quite crying and wasn't quite not crying. "She told you that," Noah managed. "First thing she said when I got there," Marcus said, before she even asked about the puppy. The puppy, as if on cue, made a small sound from Jeannie's arms. Not a sound of distress, a different kind of sound, the kind of sound that means I'm still here. "I know you're here, I'm still here." Noah looked at her. He breathed. In the far distance coming from the east, there was the sound of an engine, an old engine, a truck, and 300 people who had come to this gas station for fuel and coffee in the midpoint of a charity run, who had not expected any of this, who had not asked for any of this, turned as one toward the sound of it. Because something was happening, something that none of them had planned for. And in the particular alchemy of an ordinary afternoon, becoming something irreplaceable, they all wanted to see how it ended. The blue truck rolled slowly into the lot. Danny climbed out from the driver's side, wiping his hands on a rag, looking extremely satisfied in the way that mechanics look when they have correctly diagnosed something complicated and fixed it on the first try. The passenger door opened. Rachel Bennett stepped out. She was smaller than Noah, with the same blonde going silver hair, the same blue eyes, the same quality of a person who has weathered something significant and is still standing. She was holding herself with the careful uprightness of someone who was not going to allow herself to look fragile, not here, not in front of all these people. She stepped forward. She looked at the gas station, at the bikes, at the 300 people who had in the space of 2 hours come from nowhere and done everything. She looked at Marcus, who nodded at her. She looked at Danny, who gave her a small, quiet salute. And then she saw Noah. He was on his feet before he knew he was moving. She covered the distance between them with the particular speed of mothers, the kind that ignores heat and exhaustion in the presence of 300 witnesses. And then Noah had his arms around her, and she had her hands on his face, his bruised face, and she was saying his name in the way she had said it since the day he was born. Nobody looked away. Nobody pretended not to see. 300 Hell's Angels stood in the heat of a Nevada afternoon and watched a mother hold her son, and several of them, without any particular embarrassment about it, found that their eyes had gone a little bright. After a moment, Rachel pulled back. She looked at Noah's face, at the bruise, at the cracked lips and the exhausted eyes. "You walked all this way," she said. "I found the," Noah said. "I had to." Rachel looked at him for a long moment. "Show me the dog," she said. Jeannie brought the puppy over carefully, And Rachel Bennett looked at this tiny, battered, stubborn little creature that had somehow become the center of everything. The thing that had made Noah stop, the thing that had given him a reason to keep moving, the thing that had brought him to this gas station and these people in this afternoon. She reached out and let the puppy sniff her fingers. The puppy did. And then, with the dignity and certainty of a creature that has survived worse than anyone expected, it licked Rachel's hand. Rachel laughed. It was the kind of laugh that comes from the part of a person that exists before language. The deep, involuntary, full-body laugh of someone whose relief is so complete that the body has to let some of it out as sound. She looked up at Caleb, who was standing nearby. "Are you the one who organized all this?" Rachel asked. "I pointed," Caleb said. "These people did the work." Rachel looked out at the crowd, at the 300 strangers who had received her son, repaired her truck, cared for an injured animal driven out in the desert heat to bring her back safely. "Why," she said, "it was not an accusation. It was the honest question of someone who needed to understand." Caleb considered it for a moment. He looked at Noah. He looked at the journal still in Noah's hand. "Because your son did it first," Caleb said. "He stopped when it would have been easier to keep going. He carried something hurt and fragile for 4 miles in the heat because his father told him that's who a person should be." Caleb's voice was steady, measured, every word deliberate. "We just did what he showed us how to do." Rachel Bennett looked at her son. Noah Bennett looked at his mother. Between them, the puppy shifted in Jeannie's arms and made that small, "alive, I'm still here" sound again. And something happened in that gas station parking lot in the Nevada heat in the middle of an ordinary afternoon that had become entirely extraordinary. Something cracked open in the air in the moment, in the chests of 300 people who had come for fuel and found something else entirely. Not a resolution, not an ending, something more like a beginning. The particular feeling of witnessing something true, of being reminded without warning, without asking, in the middle of an unremarkable summer afternoon on a desert highway, that this is still possible, that people can still do this, that it still exists. The world has enough people who walk away. Be the person who stops. The blue truck stayed where Danny had parked it in the far corner of the lot, engine off, doors open to let the heat breathe out of it, and for a while nobody talked about leaving. That was the thing nobody had planned for. 300 riders with schedules and waypoints and a charity destination 2 hours west, and not one of them moved toward their bikes. They stood or sat on their machines with their feet on the ground or leaned against the station wall with their arms crossed, and they watched the Bennett family the way people watch something they didn't expect to need. Rachel had been given a folding chair that someone produced from a saddlebag. She sat in it the way people sit when their body has been running on adrenaline for hours, and the adrenaline has just decided it's done, suddenly, completely, with no warning. Noah sat on the ground beside her, cross-legged, the journal in his lap, and they talked in low voices, the way people talk after a crisis when the danger has passed but the feelings haven't caught up yet. Caleb stood nearby but not close. He had learned over many years in many difficult situations the difference between being present and hovering, and he honored that distance now. He watched Noah and Rachel the way he watched most things he cared about, quietly, from a respectful remove-taking inventory. Marcus appeared at his elbow with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Caleb without asking. "How's the leg?" Marcus said. "Yes, son." "Fine," Caleb said. "You've been standing on it for 2 hours." "It's fine, Marcus." Marcus accepted this with the practiced patience of a man who had spent 17 years arguing with people who insisted they were fine while actively bleeding. He drank his coffee. He looked at Noah and Rachel. "Kid walked 4 miles, he said, in this heat, with that bruise." "Yeah," Caleb said. "Somebody hit him." "I know. He hasn't mentioned it." "I know that too." Marcus turned the cup in his hands. "You going to ask him?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. He looked at Noah's profile, the clean line of the young man's jaw interrupted by that dark, spreading bruise. The careful way Noah was holding himself, the particular tension in his shoulders that wasn't exhaustion. It was the tension of someone carrying something they hadn't put down yet. "When he's ready," Caleb said. Marcus nodded. He trusted Caleb's read on people. He had seen it be right too many times to question it now. "The puppy's stable," Marcus added. "Jeannie says another hour and she'll eat on her own. Dehydration, a cut on the back leg, probably wire, she thinks, from a fence somewhere. Nothing that won't heal." He paused. "She says the dog has attitude." Despite everything, Caleb almost smiled. Attitude keeps things alive. So does somebody stopping, Marcus said. He said it simply, without weight, but Caleb felt the weight of it anyway. He felt it the way he felt most true things, as a pressure, somewhere in the center of his chest, gentle and insistent, like a hand pressed flat against a door. He drank his coffee, he watched the parking lot, and he let himself notice, without trying to stop it, that this afternoon had felt more like something than anything had felt in a very long time. That was either a good sign or a dangerous one. At 48, he wasn't entirely sure there was a difference. It was Rachel who moved first. She had been talking quietly with Noah, her hand on his arm, and then she looked up, looked directly at Caleb across the distance, with the clear-eyed directness of a woman who had decided something and was not going to waste time getting to it. "Would you come here?" she called. Caleb went. He pulled up another folding chair. Someone produced one immediately with the same effortless readiness that the crowd had shown all afternoon, and sat across from Rachel Bennett. Up close, she was sharper than she had looked from a distance. There were lines in her face that came from smiling and lines that came from grief, and he could tell them apart because he had both kinds himself. "Noah told me what you said," Rachel said, "about why you helped." "It's the truth," Caleb said. "I know," Rachel said. "That's why I want to talk to you about it." She leaned forward slightly, elbows on her knees, the posture of a person about to say something real. "My son has spent the last 18 months believing that the way his father lived was impractical. That kindness was something they couldn't afford anymore. Not after everything that happened." She glanced at Noah, who was looking at the ground. "I've been watching him shrink into something smaller than he is, and I couldn't figure out how to stop it." She looked back at Caleb. "And then today," Mom, Noah said quietly. "I'm telling it," Rachel said with the gentle, absolute authority of a woman who has earned the right to speak plainly. She looked at Caleb. "Today he walked 4 miles through the desert because of something his father wrote in a notebook. And every single person here moved because of him." She sat back. "I need you to understand what that means to me, because I've been praying for him to remember who he is, and today I think he did. And you, She looked at Caleb steadily. "You were part of that." Caleb held her gaze. "He did that himself," Caleb said, "long before he found us." "I know," Rachel said, "but you received it. That matters." She said it like a fact, like something with weight and consequence. Caleb thought of his son. He thought of the 3 years he had spent not receiving anything from anyone, building walls with such efficient dedication that eventually nothing got through at all. Not grief and not joy and not the particular small warmth of an afternoon where something went right. He thought about how much easier empty was than open, and how much more it cost. "He's a good man," Caleb said, and looked at Noah. Noah looked up. "Your dad did good work," Caleb said. Noah's throat moved. He didn't say anything, but he nodded once slow with the full weight of what it meant, and that was enough. That was more than enough. Then Noah straightened, his jaw set, and he said, "I need to tell you something about this morning, before the truck broke down." The air changed. Caleb felt it. Rachel felt it too. Her hand stilled on Noah's arm, and her eyes went careful in the way a mother's eyes go careful when she knows something is coming that she hasn't been told yet. "Noah," she said. "You need to know," he said. He wasn't looking at his mother. He was looking at Caleb, because it changes some things. And because I've been not saying it since I got here, and not saying it is starting to feel like lying. Caleb said nothing. He waited. Noah reached up and touched the bruise along his jaw. Not rubbing it, not drawing attention to it, dramatically just touching it briefly, like confirming it was still there, like deciding to stop pretending it wasn't. "We didn't just break down," Noah said. "That's not the whole story." The parking lot had gone quiet again. In that particular way, it went quiet when something mattered. Not because anyone was deliberately listening, just because the crowd had developed over the course of the afternoon. A sensitivity to Noah's voice, the way you develop sensitivity to a sound after you've been listening for it long enough. 3 days ago," Noah said. "Before we left Colorado, I went back to the house." Rachel's hand left his arm. "The house," Caleb said. "The one the bank took," Noah said. "My dad's house. I had some things stored in the garage that I hadn't been able to get before, tools mostly. My dad's tools. I wasn't going to leave them." He paused. The bank had already started clearing things out. There were people there, contractors, I think, doing assessment work, whatever they do before they flip a house. Another pause. One of them said something about my dad, about how clearly the guy who lived here wasn't much of a mechanic if he couldn't keep the place up. Just said it, loud to the other guy right in front of me, standing in my dad's garage. The silence in the lot was different now. I told him to watch his mouth, Noah said, that it was my father's house and my father had worked himself half to death to keep it as long as he did. His voice was even, controlled. The voice of someone who had replayed this too many times not to have gotten very precise about it. And then the contractor told me the bank owned the house now and I could either get my junk and leave or he'd call the police. Caleb watched Noah's face. I got my tools, Noah said, and I left. That was 3 days ago. He took a breath. But he followed me out to the street, him and his partner. And he stopped, chose the next words carefully. They were very clear about what they thought of a kid whose daddy left him with nothing but debt and a broken down truck. Rachel made a sound, small, involuntary, the sound of a mother processing something she should have been told 3 days ago. Noah, her voice was tight. I'm okay, he said immediately. I handled it. You handled? She stopped herself. I didn't throw the first punch, Noah said with a precision that suggested this was important to him. That matters to me. My dad always said you can defend yourself, but you don't get to carry the escalation. He looked at his hands. They escalated. I made sure they understood they'd made a mistake. And then I left. He finally looked at his mother. I didn't tell you because you already had enough to carry, and because I was handling it, and because he stopped. Because you were ashamed, Rachel said quietly. Not an accusation, a recognition. Noah was quiet for a moment. Then, because getting hit is one thing, getting hit for defending your dad's name is something I didn't know how to explain without it sounding like I was asking for something. Sympathy or I don't know. I just wanted to handle it and move forward. And then the truck broke down, Caleb said. And then the truck broke down, Noah confirmed. Caleb sat back. He thought about what he had just heard, not the surface of it, the fight, the bruise, the 3 days of not saying anything, but the deeper architecture of it. The logic that had carried this young man through all of it. Defend what matters. Don't escalate. Don't ask for what you haven't earned. Carry it yourself. Keep moving. Thomas Bennett had written that in a journal, and Noah Bennett had absorbed it so completely that he was living it even in the moments when living it was costing him something real. Here's what I want you to understand, Caleb said. He leaned forward, the same posture Rachel had taken, direct, no distance, no buffer. You did not have to earn what we did today. You understand that? Noah looked at him. You didn't come in here with a transaction, Caleb said. You came in here because you needed help, that's all. You didn't owe us your story or your father's journal or a reason good enough to justify our time. He paused. But since you've given us all of it anyway, I want you to hear me say that what you've shown us today is not something most people would have done. He held Noah's gaze. Not the walking, not the dog, not even coming here when you were scared. I mean, all of it put together. The whole of who you are and your dad. He stopped. He thought of his son. He thought of the things he would give anything to have said. Your dad knew exactly what he was doing, Caleb said, when he raised you. Noah's chin dropped for a moment. He pressed his lips together. He was working very hard at something, and everyone could see it, and nobody looked away, because this was the kind of moment that deserved witnesses. Then he picked his head back up. Okay, he said, just that, okay? But he said it the way a person says something when they have finally received it, finally let it land, instead of deflecting it, finally allowed it to mean what it was meant to mean. Rachel reached over and took his hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Then Jeannie's voice came across the lot, cutting through the quiet with the efficiency of someone who has urgent information and no interest in theatrical delivery. Hey, Noah, come here, right now. Noah was on his feet before the last word left her mouth. Caleb stood too, and Rachel, and around them, the crowd shifted and tightened in the instinctive way of people who have been invested in an outcome and suddenly think it's changing. Jeannie was crouched on the ground near her bike, and as Noah pushed through to reach her, he saw immediately what she wanted him to see. The puppy. The puppy was standing. Unsteady, 4 tiny legs doing complicated, uncertain work. Each one seeming only partly convinced it should be weight-bearing, but standing, on her own. With her head up and her eyes open, and those eyes were clearer. now genuinely clear, none of the glazed dimness of a few hours ago. She was looking around the parking lot with the bright present attention of a creature who had decided against available evidence that the world was interesting. She looked directly at Noah, and she took two wavering, completely ridiculous steps toward him. Noah dropped to his knees. Puppy walked into his hands. Nobody spoke. And then everyone spoke the way crowds speak when they've been holding something for a long time and the pressure finally releases. Not words exactly, just sound, the collective exhale of 300 people who have been more invested in the fate of a small, injured animal than they would necessarily have predicted. Danny, who had spent 41 minutes in the Nevada heat fixing an engine and had not once in the entire afternoon made any outward display of sentiment whatsoever, pressed the back of his fist against his mouth and looked at the sky. Marcus looked at the ground. Brick blew out a long, slow breath and said to no one in particular, "Well." Jeannie looked up at Noah with the professional satisfaction of someone who has done this long enough to know that sometimes it goes the right way and it never stops meaning something when it does. "She has a hell of a constitution," Jeannie said, "and she imprinted on you somewhere in those 4 miles. She knew your heartbeat before she knew anything else in the world." Noah looked at the puppy in his hands, this tiny, battered, absolutely determined small animal who had been in a ditch in the desert, who had been carried 4 miles in a jacket, who had frightened and surprised, and then moved 300 people she had never met. And something settled in his face. Something that had been wound tight all afternoon finally came to rest. "Hope," he said. He said it quietly to the puppy, not to anyone else. But everyone heard it. "That's her name," Noah said. "Hope." From somewhere in the back of the crowd, a woman said, "That's a good name." And then someone agreed, and then someone else. And the word moved through the 300 people like something passed hand to hand, not dramatic, not loud, just present, circulating, real hope. Caleb looked at the puppy. He looked at Noah. He looked at Rachel, who was standing with both hands pressed flat over her heart in the gesture of a person who has just seen something they will carry for the rest of their life. And then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, looked at the screen. The message was from a number he recognized but had not called in 8 months. His sister-in-law. His late wife's sister, Sandra, who had been trying with patience that he did not deserve to stay connected to what was left of what he had been before everything went wrong. "Saw something on the Nevada rider forms. Is that you at a gas station off 93? People are posting photos. Caleb, are you okay?" He hadn't known anyone was taking photos. He stood for a moment with the phone in his hand, looking at the message. He thought about what Sandra was seeing, what the photos must have looked like, taken from angles. He couldn't predict of this afternoon of all of it, captured in still frames and posted somewhere he hadn't anticipated. He typed back, "I'm okay. It was a good stop." He put the phone away. But something was already moving. He could feel it the way you feel weather before it arrives, a change in pressure, a shift in the quality of the air. The photos were out there, the story was out there, and stories like this in the world they lived in now didn't stay contained to Nevada rider forms. They traveled. He didn't know yet what that would mean. He found out 20 minutes later when a car pulled into the gas station from the west, a rental clean and anonymous, and a man got out who was not a biker and was not from around here, and was carrying a camera bag with the practiced casualness of someone trying to look like they weren't doing exactly what they were doing. One of the riders near the entrance clocked him immediately. Her name was Val, and she had sharp eyes and sharper instincts, and she appeared at Caleb's side with the quiet speed of a person delivering intelligence. "Journalist," she said without preamble. "Or wants to be. He's got credentials around his neck, but he's trying not to show them." Caleb turned. The man with the camera bag was maybe 35, with the particular anxious energy of someone who has driven fast to get somewhere and is now trying to act like he hasn't. He had stopped at the edge of the lot and was doing a slow, careful visual sweep, taking inventory, clearly trying to determine who was in charge. His eyes found Caleb. Caleb walked toward him. They met in the middle of the lot, equidistant from everything, and for a moment they just stood there, two men who had nothing in common, except that they were both at the same place at the same time for very different reasons. "You here for the story?" Caleb asked. The man was slightly startled by the directness. He recovered. "I work for a regional news network. We monitor the rider community forums. Someone posted photos about 20 minutes ago, and it started getting traction. I thought, You thought you'd come see if the Hells Angels did something worth filming, Caleb said. Not hostile, just precise. The man had the honesty to not flinch from that. I thought something real was happening, he said. That's my job, finding real things. Caleb looked at him for a moment. Then let me tell you how this works, Caleb said. The family is not a story unless they say they are. The dog is named Hope, and if you point a camera at her before you ask the kid who named her, I will personally make your afternoon very uncomfortable. And if you write whatever you write, and you make any part of it about spectacle. He stopped. We're not spectacle. These people came here to help. They do it every year quietly without cameras because it's the right thing to do. He held the man's gaze. Can you write that story? The journalist looked at Caleb Walker, this compact, weathered, absolutely unintimidated man who had not raised his voice once and did not need to, and he said yes. Then stay, Caleb said, and you talk to the family first. He turned and walked back toward Noah and Rachel without waiting to see if the man would follow. The man followed. Noah looked up when Caleb brought the journalist over. He looked at the camera bag. He looked at Caleb. What is this? Your story got out, Caleb said simply. Someone took photos. This gentleman drove here from wherever he came from because he wants to cover it. He looked at Noah steadily. You don't have to. Your mother doesn't have to. This is entirely your call. Noah turned to his mother. Rachel looked at the journalist. She looked at her son. She looked at Hope still in Noah's arms, looking back at the world with those newly clear, fully alive eyes. My husband used to say that good things should travel, Rachel said slowly. He genuinely believed that when something true happens, it deserves to be seen. That hiding it away is its own kind of waste. She looked at Noah. Your dad would say, tell it, she said. Noah held Hope a little closer. He looked at the journalist. You put the dog in it, he said. Hope gets to be in it. She's the reason any of this happened. The journalist who had driven 90 miles on a gut feeling and was now standing in the center of something he already knew was going to be the most important piece he'd filed in years, said, the dog is absolutely in it. Noah, the journalist reached out his hand. I'm David, he said. Noah, said Noah. He shook it. And this is my mom, Rachel, and this is Hope. He held the puppy slightly forward. She's going to want to be part of the introduction. Hope sniffed David's outstretched fingers with the grave, thorough concentration of a dog who has made it through enough for one day and is not about to be casual about strangers. And then she licked his knuckle. David laughed a genuine laugh, the involuntary kind that arrives before self-consciousness can filter it. Caleb, standing back, slightly watching all of it, felt something in his chest shift with the particular painful welcome ache of a thing that has been numb deciding to feel again. He thought about what Rachel had said. Good things should travel. I thought about his son, who had died on a highway 3 years ago and left behind a grief so heavy that Caleb had spent the time since trying to make himself too small to carry it. Pulling back, going quiet, building the wall of empty that he had told Noah about, the one that cost more than it protected. I thought about Thomas Bennett, a mechanic from Colorado who had written a sentence in a notebook for his 14-year-old son and died before he could know that sentence would walk 4 miles through the Nevada desert and land in a gas station parking lot among 300 people who needed it without knowing they did. Good things should travel. He pulled out his phone again. He opened Sandra's message. He typed, actually, you should see this. I'll call you tonight. He put the phone away. Val appeared at his side again. The writers are talking about staying for the rest of the afternoon, she said. The charity run can wait until tomorrow. Nobody wants to leave yet. Caleb looked at his writers, at the crowd of people who had come to a gas station for fuel and found instead something they needed more. They were talking to Noah, talking to Rachel, crouching down to look at Hope pressing water and food and mechanics' advice on the Bennetts, with the organized generosity of a group that had decided collectively that this family was their responsibility, now whether the family had asked for it or not. Tell them we'll sort the logistics, Caleb said. The charity organization knows us. They'll understand a delay. Val nodded. She started to go. Val, Caleb said. She looked back. Thank you, he said. For all of it, today. Val had been riding with Caleb for 11 years. She had seen him be competent, decisive, protective, and occasionally brilliant. She had very rarely seen him be grateful in the way he was being grateful right now, openly without the armor. He usually kept around the softer things. Don't thank me, she said. Thank the kid. He's the one who started it. She went. Caleb turned back to look at Noah Bennett, 22 years old. Bruised face-worn journal, a puppy named Hope in his arms, sitting in a folding chair in a Nevada gas station parking lot, telling his story to a journalist who was writing it down in the careful, precise shorthand of someone who understands they are writing something that matters. Caleb thought your dad knew exactly what he was doing, and then he thought so does he, even when he doesn't know it yet. And somewhere in the back of his chest, in the place where grief had lived so long that it had started to feel permanent, something shifted, not resolved. Grief didn't resolve. He had learned that grief just changed shape over time, but shifted. Made room, because here was the thing he had spent 3 years not admitting. He had not just lost his son, he had lost himself. And he had not known how to find his way back, because the road that leads back from that kind of loss is not marked. And there is no map, and no one can walk it for you. And the only way through is to keep moving. Like Thomas Bennett had always said, like Noah Bennett had done today, without thinking, with a bruised face and a dying puppy, and 4 miles of Nevada summer between him and the nearest human being. Be the person who stops. Caleb looked at the highway. I thought about what came next, not for Noah, not for the story, not for the charity run, or the journalist piece, or the photos spreading on the forums. What came next for him? He didn't have an answer yet. But for the first time in 3 years, the question didn't feel like the edge of something he couldn't survive. It felt like a road. And he had always known what to do with roads. You got on them, you moved. And you paid attention all the way through to everything the distance gave you. David had been a journalist for 11 years, and in 11 years, he had developed a reliable internal gauge for when a story was going to matter. It was not rational. It was not something he could explain to his editor or quantify in a pitch meeting. It was simply a pressure, a specific, insistent pressure, somewhere behind his sternum, that arrived when he was standing in the middle of something real and told him, pay attention. Don't miss this. You will not get another chance at this one. That pressure had been running at full intensity for the past 40 minutes. He sat across from Noah and Rachel with his notepad open and his recorder running, and his camera bag deliberately closed, because Caleb Walker had been absolutely clear about what happened if he made this into spectacle, and David had believed him completely. So the bag stayed closed, and he wrote by hand, and he asked questions the way he asked questions when he was trying to understand something, rather than trying to confirm something he'd already decided. Tell me about your father, David said to Noah. Noah looked at Hope, who was settled now in Rachel's lap, small chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of a creature that has finally found somewhere safe enough to rest. He looked at her for a moment before answering the way people look at something anchoring when they're about to say something that costs them. He fixed things, Noah said. That was the core of it. It wasn't just his job, it was how he understood the world. Something breaks you, figure out why you fix it. He applied that to everything, cars obviously, but also people, also situations. He turned the journal over in his hands. He couldn't walk past something broken without it bothering him. And he passed that to you, David said. He tried, Noah said. I used to think he was, I don't know, impractical. When I was a teenager, I thought he gave too much, that people took advantage of him. He paused. I was wrong about that. What changed your mind? Noah was quiet for a moment. He died, he said plainly. And the number of people who showed up, people I didn't know, people from years before I was born, people who had one interaction with my dad when their car broke down or when they needed help with something, and they all had the same story. He stopped for them. He fixed something that wasn't his responsibility to fix. He asked nothing for it. Noah's voice was even, but his hands tightened slightly on the journal. I kept thinking at the funeral, all those people. That's what a life looks like when you live it the right way. That's the actual measure. He looked up at David, and I thought, I am nowhere near that. I have not been paying attention. David wrote. He let the silence sit for a moment, because he had learned that silence after something true is not empty. It's the sound of the thing landing properly. Then Rachel said, without being prompted, without looking up from Hope, he was also terrified of birds. Noah's head turned. Your father, Rachel said, absolutely terrified. A pigeon once flew at him in a parking lot, and he dropped his groceries. She smiled at the memory, the complicated, warm smile of a woman in love with someone she has lost. He was the bravest coward I ever knew. Noah made a sound that was half laugh, half something else. I forgot about the pigeons, he said. The pigeons never forgot about him, Rachel said. David was writing, and also he was aware of this. He acknowledged it, not writing, just listening. Because some things you write down and some things you just receive. And a mother talking about a dead husband's fear of pigeons while stroking an injured puppy in a Nevada gas station parking lot he was certain one of those things. Then Caleb came back from wherever he had been, and something in his bearing was different. Not dramatically different, not the kind of different that announces itself, the subtle kind. The kind you only catch if you've been watching a person carefully, and David had been watching everyone carefully all afternoon because that was his job and also because he could not stop. Caleb sat down. He looked at David. "Are you getting what you need more than?" David said honestly. Caleb nodded. He looked at Noah. And then he said in the careful tone of a man delivering information he is not sure how it will land, "I need to tell you both something. The photos from this afternoon, they've been shared about 400 times in the last hour. There's a forum post on a national motorcycle community site, and it's getting comments from people across the country." He paused. "The story is out, not the way David is going to write it. That will take time and be done properly. But the broad strokes, people know something happened here today." Noah looked at him. "What does that mean?" "It means," Caleb said, "that in the next few hours your names are going to be attached to something that a lot of strangers have, and some of those feelings are going to be good, and some of them are going to be complicated, and some small number of them are going to be from people who are looking for a reason to be angry about something they don't fully understand." He held Noah's gaze. "I want you to be ready for that." Noah absorbed this. "Ready how? Know your story," Caleb said. "Don't let anyone else tell it for you." And he glanced at the journal in Noah's hands. "Hold on to that." Noah looked down at the journal. He turned it over once. He looked back at Caleb with an expression that was trying to be uncertain and not quite getting there, because underneath the uncertainty was something steadier than he was giving himself credit for. "I'm not scared of people knowing," Noah said slowly. He stopped. "My dad was a private man. He didn't do things to be seen. He did them because they were right, and I don't want people to turn that into something it isn't." "Then say that," Caleb said. "When people ask, and they're going to ask, just say exactly that." He leaned forward slightly. "The truth is simple here, Noah. A man raised his son to be decent. His son was decent today in a hard moment. That is the entire story. Anyone who makes it into something more complicated than that is the one making it complicated." David was writing. Rachel was watching Caleb with an expression that David had seen on the faces of people who have just heard someone say something they have needed to hear for a long time from someone whose authority to say it was earned in a way they respect. Then Val came fast across the parking lot, and her pace quick, purposeful, with the specific quality of a person carrying urgent information, pulled everyone's attention before she'd said a word. "Caleb," she said. She stopped beside him. She glanced at Noah and Rachel and David and made the rapid calculation of someone deciding how much to filter. She filtered nothing. "There's a man at the east entrance. He's been sitting in a truck out on the highway for about 20 minutes. One of the guys flagged it. The truck has Colorado plates." The air quality changed. Not dramatically, not with any sound, just changed. The way a room changes when a door opens and someone comes in that everyone can feel before they've seen. Noah had gone very still. "What kind of truck?" he said. Val looked at him. "White F-150, newer model, 2 men in it." Noah set Hope down very gently on Rachel's lap. He stood up. His movement was not panicked. It was the controlled, deliberate movement of someone who has made a decision in the space of 2 seconds and is already acting on it. "Noah," Rachel said. "It's them," Noah said. Caleb was on his feet. "The contractors." Noah didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. The answer was already in the line of his shoulders, the set of his jaw, the way his hands had gone to his sides with the specific stillness of someone restraining an instinct. "They followed us," he said, "or they found us some other way." "Either way," he stopped. "Either way," Caleb said quietly, "they came here." "They followed us from Colorado," Rachel said. Her voice was not frightened. It was something colder than frightened. It was the voice of a woman processing the implications of something with complete clarity. "They drove from Colorado to Nevada to—" She stopped. "Why, Mom?" "Because I embarrassed them," Noah said. He was still looking toward the east entrance. "Because whatever they thought was going to happen in that street didn't happen. And men like that," he exhaled, "men like that don't leave things where they land. Caleb looked at Val. How many of ours are near the entrance? 6 right now, Val said. They're aware. Nobody's moved yet. Good, Caleb said. Nobody moves. He looked at Noah. I want you to stay here. Noah turned to look at him. Those are my problems, Noah said. They are, Caleb agreed. And you're in my parking lot. He said it simply, without aggression, without theater. Just the precise statement of a jurisdictional fact. Let me take a look at what we're dealing with. Noah studied Caleb's face for a long moment. He was doing the same reading that Caleb had done to him 4 hours ago. In the first seconds after he collapsed at the entrance, looking for calculation, for agenda, for something behind the surface that would require distrust. He found none. Okay, Noah said, but I want to see. Caleb didn't argue with that. He nodded once and walked toward the east entrance, and Noah fell into step beside him. And nobody who watched them walk side by side, the 48-year-old biker and the 22-year-old mechanic moving with matching purpose across the parking lot, missed the significance of what that looked like. The white F-150 was parked on the highway, shoulder engine running, maybe 60 yards from the lot entrance. Even at that distance, even through a windshield, you could see 2 figures inside. The passenger was turned toward the lot watching. The driver had his hands on the wheel. Caleb stopped at the edge of the lot. He stood with his arms loose at his sides and his weight balanced and his gaze on the truck, and he did not do anything else. He just stood there, present, visible, unhurried. Beside him, Noah said quietly, the one on the passenger side, that's the one who said what he said about my dad. Okay, Caleb said, nothing more. He's got a temper, Noah said. The driver is smarter, calmer, more dangerous in some ways. Caleb absorbed this. You got a good read on them in a short window, he said. Not a question, an observation. My dad said you learn the most about a man in the first 15 seconds of a confrontation, Noah said, before he has time to decide how he wants to be seen. He was right, Caleb said. They stood, the truck idled. Around them, behind them, to either side, spreading from the entrance throughout the lot. The crowd of 300 people had rearranged itself in the way crowds rearrange when they are not panicking, but are paying very close attention. Nobody had been told to do anything. Nobody had been organized. But there was suddenly a perceptible density of people near the entrance, casually positioned, apparently relaxed individually, doing entirely ordinary things and collectively forming something that was unmistakably deliberate. The men in the truck saw it. The passenger said something to the driver. The driver put the truck in gear. He pulled a U-turn on the empty highway and drove west. He did not drive fast. He drove at exactly the speed of a man who has decided to leave and is committed to appearing like the decision was entirely his own. But he drove. And within 30 seconds, the white F-150 was a shape in the distance, and then it was nothing. The crowd behind Caleb and Noah released something, not noise, not movement, just a collective easing of the air. The sound of 300 people simultaneously deciding not to hold their breath anymore. Noah watched the empty highway. That's it, he said. That's it, Caleb said. They just did some math, Caleb said. Found out the numbers didn't work in their favor. He turned away from the highway. Come on. Noah turned with him. He walked back across the lot, and as he walked, he passed riders who met his eyes in the specific direct way that means we saw. We were here. We had you. None of them said anything. None of them needed to. Danny clapped him once on the shoulder as he passed, and then immediately went back to the conversation he had been having, as if nothing had been interrupted, which was, Noah would later reflect, one of the most dignified things anyone did for him all day. Rachel was standing when they got back. Hope was in her arms. Her face carried every emotion she'd been through in the last 3 hours simultaneously, and she was managing all of them with the composed efficiency of a woman who had decided that falling apart was not an available option right now and would need to be scheduled for later. Gone, she said. Gone, Caleb said. Rachel looked at him. Thank you. The 300 people standing behind us, thank you, Caleb said. Rachel almost smiled. Almost. I'd like to thank them too, she said. All of them. But I don't know, she looked out at the crowd. I don't know how you thank something this size. You just say it, Caleb said. They'll hear you. So Rachel Bennett, 51 years old, heart condition, limited medication, standing in a Nevada gas station parking lot holding an injured puppy named Hope, turned to face 300 Hells Angels and raised her voice. I don't have a speech, she said, loud enough to carry, steady enough to mean it. I'm not good at speeches. My husband was better at them than me. She paused. What I have is a son, and today my son remembered who he is. And every one of you, her voice caught briefly and she let it, and then she continued, every one of you helped him remember. So, thank you. That is the most important thing I have ever needed to say to strangers in my life. Thank you. The crowd was quiet. Then someone started clapping, and then someone else. And then it was 300 people, which is not a polite audience sound. It is a physical thing. It has mass and weight and heat, and it rolled over Rachel and Noah and Hope and Caleb like something warm and irresistible. Noah was not crying. He was being very firm about not crying, which was evident to everyone watching, which somehow made it more moving than if he had simply given into it. Then David, who had been writing through all of it with the focused intensity of a man who knows he is in the middle of something he will be talking about for the rest of his career, lowered his note. Pat, he looked at Caleb. There's something you haven't told them, David said. Caleb turned. I've been listening, David said, all afternoon. You've been here present, organizing, saying the right things, but there's something you haven't said. He paused. I don't know what it is, but I can see it. The thing you're carrying. The people nearest to them went quiet. Caleb looked at David with the expression of a man who is deciding several things at once. He looked at Noah, who was watching him with the open, patient attention of someone who has been honest himself today and recognizes the particular stillness of a person standing at the edge of the same territory. Then Caleb Walker, who had not talked about his son in 3 years, except in the one sentence he had already shared with Noah, sat down in the folding chair. And he talked. He talked about his son's name first. Jacob. That was the beginning, the name, because for 3 years he had avoided saying it, and the avoidance had become its own kind of wound. Jacob Walker had been 26. He'd had his father's eyes and his mother's laugh and his own version of both, which was better than either. He had been writing for 2 years, not because Caleb had pushed him to, but because he'd asked and because Caleb had thought, if I teach him, at least I know he's doing it right. He had been a good writer. He had been a careful writer. He had been killed by a driver who ran a red light on a Tuesday afternoon for no reason that anyone would ever be able to fully explain, because some things don't have explanations, they just have weight. His mother went 18 months after him, Caleb said. She held on for as long as she could, but when you lose a child, he stopped, started again. It changes the composition of things, what you're made of, what holds you together. He looked at his hands. After she went, I came very close to stopping. The other kind of stopping, the permanent kind. The parking lot was completely, totally silent. This was the twist that nobody had seen coming. Not David, not Val, not Marcus, not even the riders who had known Caleb for 20 years and thought they understood the shape of what he carried. The quiet, competent, endlessly reliable man who had been the first to move today, who had crouched down in a parking lot and told a terrified stranger he was safe, that man had spent 3 years on the edge of his own disappearance. Noah was very still. What stopped you? He asked. This, Caleb said. He gestured at the ride, at the crowd, at the whole improbable annual gathering. The rides, getting on the bike and moving. Finding out that motion, if you sustain it long enough, starts to feel like reason. He paused. And people, the people I ride with, they weren't dramatic about it. They didn't sit me down and have conversations. They just kept showing up, every ride, making room for me. That's a particular kind of love, the kind that doesn't announce itself. Your wife, Rachel said gently. What was her name? Caleb looked at her. Marie, he said, and then quietly, the way you say the name of someone you are still learning to lose, her name was Marie. Rachel nodded. She held a little closer. She would have liked today, Caleb said. After a moment, she would have liked Noah. She liked people who were stubborn about the right things. Noah made a sound that was trying to be a laugh. It mostly was. She sounds like she had good taste, Noah said. Impeccable, Caleb said. She married me, which was a borderline decision, but everything else was impeccable. The laughter that moved through the nearby crowd was real. Sudden, unguarded, the kind that comes when tension has been held at a very high pitch and then released all at once into something human and warm and ordinary. David was writing, fast head down, handwriting, deteriorating at the edges the way it did when he was trying to capture things faster than his hand could move. He was not thinking about the story right now in the professional sense. He was thinking about it the way a person thinks about something they are living through, with the full weight of presence, the awareness that this moment, This specific afternoon is not going to come again. Then Marcus appeared with the look on his face that David had not yet seen on him, and David had been cataloging faces all afternoon. Concern, not the reactive concern of a crisis, the deeper kind, the kind that comes from professional experience and a very specific observation. He went directly to Caleb. He crouched. He spoke low directly into Caleb's ear so that no one else could hear. But his eyes flicked once to Noah, and David caught it and felt the pressure behind his sternum intensify. Caleb stood up immediately. "Noah," he said. His voice had changed, not alarmed, but focused in a different way. The way a person focuses when they have received information and are managing it. "When did your mother last take her medication?" The temperature of the moment changed instantly. Noah looked at Rachel. Rachel looked back at him with an expression that said several things simultaneously. And the primary thing it said was, "I didn't want to be the thing you were worrying about right now." "This morning," Noah said. His voice had gone tight. "She had one this morning. She's supposed to take another one in." He looked at his phone. He looked at the time. "It was supposed to be an hour ago." "I was going to mention it," Rachel started. "Mom." "There were other things happening," Rachel said with the specific defensive calm of a woman who has been managing her own health condition long enough to know when she is and is not in immediate danger and is also aware that her son does not share this calm. "I know my body. I wasn't going to wait much longer." "Marcus," Caleb said. Marcus was already there. He had been there before Caleb said his name. "Sit down, Mrs. Bennett," he said with the particular authority of medical professionals that is not a suggestion. "Let me check you over. We're going to figure out the medication situation." "I have the prescription," Rachel said, complying with the sitting, while clearly not conceding any ground on the question of whether this was necessary. "I have the bottle. We just need a pharmacy." "Nearest pharmacy is 18 miles, Val said from somewhere to Caleb's left. She had apparently been running logistics in parallel. "I can have someone there and back in 40 minutes. "I'll go," said three people simultaneously. Caleb pointed at one of them, a rider named Sal, who had been running courier for the club for years, and who treated the word fast as a personal commitment. "Sal, go." Sal was on his bike before the sentence was finished. Noah was crouched in front of his mother now, at eye level with his hands on her hands, and the look on his face was the look of someone who has been holding it together through the force of will alone, and is now doing a rapid, frightened inventory of how much of that will is left. "Why didn't you tell me?" he said. Not angry, just raw. The kind of question that doesn't want an argument, just an answer. "Because you were already carrying enough," Rachel said. She touched his face, the bruised side, gently with the back of her fingers. "And because I was fine, I am fine. Marcus will agree with me in a minute." Marcus looked up from what he was doing. "Her pulse is steady with you," he said. "Color is good. She's been through a hard afternoon, and she needs her medication and something to eat. But she's not in crisis." "See," Rachel said. "This time," Noah said. "Noah. This time, Mom. This time you're not in crisis." He was still holding her hands. His voice had gone quiet in the way voices go quiet when they are trying not to communicate the full extent of what they feel. "You have to tell me these things. I can't do what I'm supposed to do if you're protecting me from information I need." Rachel looked at her son. She looked at him with the full, unguarded look of a mother who sees her child clearly, not as a child, but as a person, adult, informed and real with his own specific capacities and his own specific weight to carry. The look of a woman updating her understanding of who her son has become. "You're right," she said. Noah blinked. He had not expected the concession to be immediate. You're right," Rachel said again. "I treat you like I'm protecting you, and you've been protecting me for 18 months without asking for anything. So yes." She squeezed his hands. "You're right. I'll tell you." Noah sat back on his heels. He breathed. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said. They held that for a moment, the two of them in the middle of everything, finding the small essential renegotiation of what they were to each other now. Caleb watched them. He thought about Marie. He thought about all the conversations they had not had, all the things they had protected each other from, all the ways love sometimes looks like withholding, and how that was not always wrong, but was sometimes at critical moments exactly wrong. He thought about Jacob. I thought about the last conversation he'd had with his son, an ordinary phone call about an ordinary thing, a problem with Jacob's apartment's heating system that Caleb had talked him through over the phone. both of them mildly annoyed and mildly amused, and entirely unaware that it was the last time, that the next call would be a different kind. You never get to know, he thought, which conversation is the last one, so you have to say the things. Noah, he said. Noah looked up. There's something I want to talk to you about, Caleb said. Not right now, when things settle a little, but before you leave today. Noah studied him. Okay, he said. It's not bad, Caleb said. He paused, choosing the words with the care of a man who has spent 3 years not choosing words and is relearning how. I want to offer you something, and I want to do it properly. Noah waited. Your dad was a mechanic, Caleb said. You're a mechanic. You're going to Las Vegas. Eventually, Noah said. He glanced at his mother. Our plans have had some revision. I know someone in Las Vegas, Caleb said. A garage owner. Good man. Runs a legitimate operation, pays fairly, has been looking for someone who knows what they're doing for 6 months. He held Noah's gaze. I was going to call him anyway when I got in. I could mention your name. Noah went still. I don't need charity, he said. It came out immediately reflexively in the voice of his father and his father's father, and every generation before them that had learned early that the most dangerous thing was owing someone something you couldn't repay. It's not charity, Caleb said. He said it with the calm of a man who had expected this response and had his answer already prepared. I'm recommending a mechanic to an employer. That's it. You get there, you interview, you either get the job or you don't. I'm not giving you anything except a phone call. He paused. What you do with it is your business. Noah looked at him for a long moment. He thought about his father. He thought about the journal. I thought about 4 miles of desert and an injured puppy and a gas station full of strangers who turned out to be something else entirely. He thought about what it means to receive something, to actually receive it, to let it land, instead of deflecting it out of pride dressed as principle. Okay, Noah said. Okay, Caleb said. Yes, Noah said. And this time there was no qualification in it, no hedge. Just a young man accepting something that was offered in the spirit in which his father had always lived, not transaction, not debt. Just one person extending a hand to another because it was the right thing to do. And the moment was right, and the road ahead was long. Caleb nodded. Then Sal's bike came through the lot entrance at a speed that was technically legal and practically reckless, and he came to a stop with the smooth, controlled confidence of someone who takes pride in arrival, and he was already extending a pharmacy bag before his feet hit the ground. 18 miles, Sal announced, in 22 minutes. 3 people applauded. You ran a light, Val said. I rolled a light, Sal corrected with great dignity. It's a different thing entirely. Rachel took her medication from Marcus with the cooperative grace of a woman who has made her point about being fine and is now willing to let the people around her feel useful. She swallowed it with water that someone had already produced and handed to her before she'd finished reaching for it. She looked around at the people surrounding her. All of them, the riders, the mechanic, the paramedic, the woman who had saved her son's puppy, the journalist who had stopped writing and was just watching, now the man named Caleb who had started all of it by standing up and walking toward a stranger in distress. I don't know how to make sense of this day, Rachel said quietly. Not to anyone in particular, to the afternoon, to whatever was listening. You don't have to make sense of it today, Caleb said. Just let it be what it is. Rachel looked at him. What is it? She asked. Caleb looked at Noah. He looked at Hope, who had fallen asleep in Rachel's lap with the absolute conviction of a creature that has found its place in the world and intends to stay there. He looked at the 300 people around them who had not left, who had stayed through all of it, the rescue, the revelation, the confrontation, the medication, run the tears and the laughter and the silence in between. A good day, Caleb said. That's what it is. Rachel held that for a moment. Then she nodded. A good day, she agreed, and the Nevada sun kept pressing down on everything and the engine stayed cool and nobody moved toward the road, and the afternoon deepened around them, all of it warm, all of it real, all of it still unfinished in the way the best things always are. The sun had moved, not dramatically, it never moved dramatically in Nevada, it just repositioned itself with the slow, deliberate authority of something that has all the time in the world and knows it. The shadows from the wax station had stretched and shifted, and the heat had changed quality from the aggressive, confrontational heat of midday to the deeper, more settled heat of late afternoon, the kind that sits in the body instead of pressing against it. Nobody had left. That was still the fact that kept asserting itself. 300 people with places to be with a charity destination, 2 hours west with schedules that had been built around a specific arrival time, and not one of them had moved toward their bikes with any real intention. They had rearranged. They had found positions of varying comfort against machines and walls and each other. They had eaten bad gas station food and drunk quantities of coffee that would have concerned any reasonable physician. And they had stayed. Caleb noticed this the way he noticed most things quietly without making a production of it. He stood near the station wall and watched the lot and let himself understand what he was seeing. 300 people who were not sentimental, who were not naive, who had between them enough collective experience of the world's harshness to fill several libraries, and they were staying because something was happening here that they did not want to stop being inside of. He understood that. He felt it himself. Val came to stand beside him. She had a coffee that she wasn't drinking, just holding, which was what Val did when she was thinking through something she hadn't yet decided to say. "What?" Caleb said. "The charity organization called," Val said. "I told them we'd be delayed. I didn't give them specifics." "What did they say?" "They said take the time we needed." She paused. "They also said someone from the forum post had reached out to them. They already know the broad strokes of what happened." Caleb absorbed this, and Val looked at him sideways. "And the director said, and I'm quoting here, 'Tell Caleb that's exactly the kind of thing we started this ride for.'" She let that sit for a moment. She sounded like she meant it. Caleb didn't respond immediately. He looked at the lot, at Noah, who was sitting with David now in what had become a more relaxed conversation, less interview, more two people talking, which was when interviews became what they should be. At Rachel, who had eaten something finally and had her color back, and was talking with Jeannie about hope with the focused interest of a woman who has decided that a dog is joining her household and is now conducting the relevant research. At Danny, who had found someone's bike with a chain issue and had volunteered himself into fixing it because Danny's relationship with mechanical problems was essentially compulsive. "Call her back," Caleb said. "Tell her we'll make the destination tomorrow morning instead. And tell her," he paused, "tell her we have a family that's going to need some support getting to Las Vegas. I want to make sure the road between here and there is clear for them." Val looked at him. "You want to escort them?" "I want to make sure they get where they're going safely," Caleb said. "Whatever that looks like." Val was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know they're going to write about you, David, in that piece." "I know. They're going to write about Jacob." The name landed the way it always landed, with weight, with the specific gravity of something real that has not stopped being real just because time has passed. But it landed differently than it had for 3 years. Not easier. Caleb didn't trust easy, didn't believe grief became easy, only that it changed but differently. Like saying Jacob's name out loud to Noah had shifted something in the architecture of how he carried it. "That's okay," Caleb said. Val looked at him for a long moment. "Okay," she said. She started to move away. "Val," she stopped. 11 years, Caleb said. "You've been riding with me for 11 years, and you've never once, not once, made me talk about something I wasn't ready to talk about." He looked at her directly. "I don't think I've ever said thank you for that." Val held his gaze. She was not a woman who was demonstrative about things that mattered to her. She showed up, she solved problems, she stayed, and she trusted that people with eyes could see what that meant. "You don't need to thank me," she said. "I know I don't need to," Caleb said. "I want to." Val looked away. She looked at the lot, at the crowd, at the long afternoon that was becoming something none of them had planned for. "You're different today," she said quietly. "Since this morning, since that kid came through the entrance." "I know," Caleb said. "Is it good different, or is it—" "I don't know yet," Caleb said honestly, "but I think it's the right kind." Val nodded once, and she walked away. She did not look back because she never looked back. It was not her way, but the set of her shoulders carried something that in anyone else might have been called relief. Then Noah appeared at Caleb's side, moving with the quiet deliberateness of someone who has been working up to a thing and has decided now is the time. "David is good," Noah said. He meant it as information, but there was something more in the way he said it, a quality of surprise of having expected something and gotten something else. He's not trying to make it into something it isn't. "I told him what would happen if he did," Caleb said. "I know. He told me." Noah almost smiled. He seemed like he believed you. Most people do, Caleb said. They stood for a moment in the companionable silence of two people who have been through enough together in one afternoon. That silence is no longer uncomfortable between them. The thing about compressed time, about hours that contain the emotional weight of years, is that it accelerates everything, including trust. Noah and Caleb had known each other for less than 6 hours. It felt like something longer. Not because they had decided it would, but because that's what truth does. It shortens the distance between people. There's something I want to ask you, Noah said. And I want to ask it before I lose my nerve, because I'm going to lose my nerve if I don't say it now. Caleb turned to look at him. The journal, Noah said. He held it up. The worn, soft-covered notebook that Thomas Bennett had kept, that had traveled from Colorado in a jacket pocket, that had been pressed against a 22-year-old man's chest through 4 miles of Nevada desert. There's more in it than that one sentence. My dad wrote, he wrote a lot. About the road, about people he helped, about things he saw and thought and believed. Noah paused. Some of it is private, but some of it, he stopped, looked at the journal. Some of it is the kind of thing that shouldn't only live in one person's jacket. Caleb waited. Would you read some of it? Noah said. Not now, I don't mean right now, but sometime. Because there's an entry. He opened the journal. He found the page without having to look for it, the way you find pages that you have returned to so many times that your hands know the place. My dad wrote about a biker he met once, years ago. I don't know if it was this group or a different one, but he wrote about it. He held the journal out toward Caleb. I think you should read it. Caleb looked at the open page. He took the journal. He read. The entry was undated. Thomas Bennett's handwriting was the handwriting of a man who had not had much time for writing. Functional, slightly cramped, the letters of someone working fast because the idea mattered more than the presentation. But it was legible and it was clear, and Caleb read every word of it. Thomas Bennett had written about a day years ago when his truck had broken down on a highway in New Mexico. He had been alone. He had been carrying tools, a set of socket wrenches he'd saved for 2 years to buy, and he'd been heading to a job 2 states away, a job that was going to cover 3 months of bills if he made it on time. And then the engine went and the phone died, and he was standing on the shoulder of an empty highway with no way forward. He wrote, a group of bikers stopped. I don't know which group. I didn't ask. I was scared, and then I was embarrassed for being scared, and then I was something else. I was just grateful. Because they didn't ask me why I deserved help. They didn't make me prove I was worth their time. They just stopped. They fixed my truck. They waited until I started the engine and heard it run right. And then they rode away, and I sat on that shoulder for 10 minutes after they were gone because I didn't trust my legs yet. I've thought about that day 100 times since. I've wondered if those men knew what they gave me, not just the fixed truck. The other thing, the thing that's harder to name, the proof that strangers will stop, that the road is not as empty as it looks from the shoulder, that there are people in this world who give something they don't have to give and ask nothing for it. If I ever have a son, I want him to know about those men. I want him to understand that they exist, that there is a category of person who stops, and that category is available to everyone if you're willing to pay the cost of it. The cost is just attention. The cost is just caring enough to look. Caleb finished reading. He stood with the journal in his hands and did not speak for a moment. He looked at the page. He looked at Thomas Bennett's handwriting, the practical, hurried script of a mechanic from Colorado who had been scared on a highway in New Mexico and had been given something he'd spent the rest of his life trying to pass forward. His hands were not entirely steady. He was aware of this and did not try to correct it. He never told me which group it was, Noah said quietly. He just said bikers. He said they wore leather and they looked like trouble, and they were the best people he'd ever met on the road. Noah looked at Caleb. I don't know if it was your group. I don't know if it was even the same state. But when I was running toward this station today, when I saw all of you, I thought about this entry. I thought about my dad standing on that shoulder. He paused. And I thought he would want me to run toward them, not away. Caleb stood with the journal. He thought about New Mexico. He thought about the rides his group had done through that state years ago, the stops they'd made, the people they'd encountered on the road. He had no specific memory of a mechanic with a broken truck. They had stopped for so many people. They had fixed so many things, but that was the point, wasn't it? That was exactly the point. You stop, you fix the thing, you ride away, you don't keep score, and and you don't take credit, and you can never know what that afternoon becomes in the life of the person you helped. You don't know that they go home and write it in a journal. You don't know that they raise a son on the story of it. You don't know that 20 years later, that son runs 4 miles through a desert and throws himself on the mercy of 300 strangers because his father taught him that strangers who ride in leather are worth trusting. You just stop, and you trust that stopping matters, and you ride away. I'd like to keep this for a little while, Caleb said. He held the journal carefully like something that had earned careful handling. If you'll trust me with it. I trust you with it, Noah said. No hesitation. Caleb nodded. He held the journal and looked at the lot and felt the pressure behind his sternum that had been building since the moment Noah collapsed at the entrance, the pressure of a day insisting on being felt. He had spent 3 years building himself to be impervious to exactly this kind of pressure. He was discovering that the construction had not held as well as he'd thought, and he was discovering, somewhat to his own surprise, that he was not sorry about that. Then Marcus appeared at a pace that was just below a run, close enough to control that it didn't trigger panic in the crowd, fast enough that Caleb's hand tightened on the journal before he could think about it. What? Caleb said. Phone call, Marcus said. Val's phone. Someone is trying to reach the Bennett family. He looked at Noah. Someone saw the forum posts. You need to hear this. Noah straightened. Who is it? She says she's Rachel's sister, Marcus said. From Las Vegas. The lot went quiet again in that immediate crowd instinct way. Rachel was there before anyone had to get her. She had been watching Marcus's approach with the same attention everyone else had, and she was already moving, already reaching for Val's phone, and the name she said, Linda, carried a whole relationship in 2 syllables, the specific shorthand of sisters who have been close and then been separated by circumstance and geography and the hard management of their own separate lives. Linda, Rachel said into the phone. Everyone gave her space. The crowd shifted back naturally without instruction, giving Rachel a bubble of privacy in the middle of everything. Noah stood close enough to be there, far enough to give her room. They could not hear the other side of the call. They could hear Rachel. They heard her say, "We're okay, yes. We're at a gas station outside, no listen. We're okay, there were people here. Linda, there were people here." Her voice was shaking, but not with fear, with something that needed to be said and had been waiting. Someone stopped. A lot of someones. A pause. Yes, we're coming. We'll be there, I promise. Another pause longer, and then Rachel said something that nobody in the lot had expected. Linda, I need to tell you something. Noah, you should know what your nephew did today. She told her, standing in the middle of a Nevada gas station parking lot surrounded by 300 people who went completely silent and did not pretend otherwise. Rachel Bennett told her sister in Las Vegas everything that had happened from the moment the truck broke down to the moment Sal came back with medication in 22 minutes. She told her about the puppy. She told her about the journal. She told her about the men who had driven out in the heat to fix their truck. She told her about 300 people who had stayed. And when she finished, there was a silence on the other end of the line that lasted long enough that Noah reached toward his mother with one hand, instinctive, protective, and Rachel caught it and held it without looking at him. Then through the phone, audible, in the silence around them, a voice that they could not fully hear said something. And Rachel listened, and her face changed in the specific way that faces change when something that has been broken for a long time is being mended. She said, I know, Linda. She hung up. She stood for a moment with Val's phone in both hands. Then she turned to Noah. She wants us there as soon as we can get there, she said. She stopped, composed herself with the quick, efficient composure of a woman who has had a great deal of practice. She said she's been waiting for us to need her, that she's been waiting for us to ask. Noah looked at his mother. Why didn't we ask, he said, not accusatory, genuinely asking. Because we didn't want to be a burden, Rachel said. We didn't want to be the people who needed help. She looked at her son. He looked at her. And between them passed the shared simultaneous understanding that this exact thing was what the journal was about, was what Thomas Bennett had written for. The sentence on the page, the story from New Mexico, the whole careful architecture of who he had taught his son to be, it was aimed at this moment, at this particular resistance, at the specific human stubbornness of refusing to receive what you would freely give. Be the person who stops, For others, yes, but also let others stop for you. Rachel had gone to Caleb next. She stood in front of him with the directness that was simply her nature, no performance, no distance. Just a woman who knew what she wanted to say and said it. That entry in the journal, she said. Thomas never told me specifically what he wrote, but I knew he had written about those men. She looked at Caleb's hands where the journal still rested. He talked about them sometimes, not often, but when he did, his whole face changed. She paused. He used to say there are men out there who don't need a reason. They see something wrong and they fix it, and they don't need anything from you after. He said finding those men was the luckiest thing that ever happened to him on the road. She held Caleb's gaze. He would have said the same thing about today, without hesitation. Caleb was quiet for a moment. I want to tell you something about your husband, Caleb said. I don't know if it was us in New Mexico. I genuinely don't know. We've stopped for a lot of people. That's not modesty. That's just the truth of a lot of rides over a lot of years. He paused. But here is what I know without any doubt. Whoever stopped for Thomas Bennett on that highway gave him something, and he spent the rest of his life multiplying it. Every person he helped, every time he stopped, that he was the same gift passed forward. And today, he looked at Noah. Today it came back around. That's not coincidence. That's just how it works if you keep doing it long enough. Rachel pressed her lips together. She nodded. Keep the journal as long as you need, she said. He'd want it read. David had stopped writing entirely. He was sitting with his notepad on his knee and his pen not moving, and he had the look of a man who was recalibrating something fundamental about the piece he thought he was writing. He had come for a human interest story, bikers help stranded, family unusual encounter, heartwarming angle. He had found something else. He had found a story about inheritance, about how the things we give away come back to us in forms we don't recognize until we're standing inside them. About how a sentence in a notebook can walk 4 miles through desert heat and change the direction of 300 lives on a Tuesday afternoon in Nevada. He would spend 3 weeks writing this piece. It would be the best thing he ever wrote. He didn't know that yet, but he felt the outline of it, the pressure behind the sternum, fully confirmed, now unmistakable. Then Jeannie said from where she was sitting with Hope, "She wants Noah." Everyone looked. Hope was awake, had been awake for a while, getting steadier by the hour. And she was doing the thing she had been doing since she woke up, which was orienting herself in any given space until she found Noah and then directing her full attention at him with the focused, unwavering certainty of a creature that has decided on its person and considers the matter closed. Noah went to her. He sat down beside Jeannie and took Hope into his hands, and the puppy climbed his forearm and settled against his chest in the exact position she had been carried for 4 miles, pressing her nose to the left side of his shirt, finding the heartbeat that was hers, now that had been hers since a ditch on the side of a Nevada highway. "She's going to be fine," Jeannie said. "The leg will heal clean. She'll need a vet in Las Vegas soon within a few days, but there's no infection. The cut is closed and she's eating and hydrating and has opinions about things, which is the best possible sign." "Opinions about what?" Noah said. "About me specifically," Jeannie said dryly. "She tolerated my assistance, but she was clear about who she belongs to." Noah looked at Hope. Hope looked back at him with the clear, direct eyes of a creature that has no ambiguity about the world and no patience for it in others. She was small and she was battered, and she had been left in a ditch, and none of that had diminished her in any way that mattered. She was exactly who she was, pressed against a heartbeat, completely certain. "She's the bravest thing I've ever seen," Noah said quietly. "No," Jeannie said. "You're the bravest thing. She just had good sense about who to trust." Noah looked up from Hope. He looked at Jeannie. I was trying to think of something to say to that and not finding it, which was fine because Jeannie had not said it expecting a response. She'd said it because it was true and because true things should be said. Caleb was watching from a few feet away. He was holding Thomas Bennett's journal with both hands, not reading it anymore, just holding it. Like holding a tool that belongs to someone else with the particular care you give things that have been trusted to you. He thought about Jacob. I thought about the conversations they'd had on long rides, Jacob on his own bike, Caleb on his, talking through earpieces about nothing in particular and everything important. He thought about the quality of those conversations, the specific freedom of talking while moving the way the road made honesty easier, the way you said things on a highway that you couldn't quite get to sitting still. I thought I should have told him, I should have said it more directly. I should have said you are the best thing I ever did. I should have said it every time I thought it instead of assuming he knew. But then he thought about Thomas Bennett, who had written it in a journal instead of saying it to his son's face, who had encoded it in a sentence about stopping in a story about New Mexico in a notebook that a 22-year-old was still carrying in his jacket, and how that had worked out. How those words had traveled. How they had landed. Maybe it doesn't matter, Caleb thought, how you say it. Maybe it just matters that you mean it and you put it somewhere real. He opened the journal to a clean page near the back. He looked at it for a moment. Then he looked at Noah. He stopped. Would you mind if I wrote something in here? Noah looked at the journal. He looked at Caleb. He looked at the question with the full weight it carried, someone asking to enter the space where his father had lived, to add something to what Thomas Bennett had built there. Yeah, Noah said. His voice was careful. Yeah, I would like that. Caleb found the pen in his jacket pocket that had been there for 6 months without being used for anything except signing receipts. He sat down. He thought for a moment, not long, because the thing he wanted to write was already there, already formed, had been forming, since the moment he'd read Thomas Bennett's handwriting and felt his hands go unsteady. He wrote, "Your father stopped for us today, the same as we stopped for him. He sent his son, and his son carried your words, and your words changed things here that I didn't know still could be changed. I've been on the road a long time. I've stopped for a lot of people. I stopped because I believed it mattered, even when I'd stopped believing most other things. Today I found out why. It was leading here. It was leading to a boy who walked 4 miles through a Nevada desert because you told him to. Tell him again whenever he reads this, you got it right. You did it right. The world has enough people who walk away. He is not one of them. CW." He closed the journal. He held it for one more moment. Then he walked to Noah and handed it back. Noah took it. He held it without opening it. He looked at Caleb. "Did you sign it?" "Just initials," Caleb said. Noah tucked the journal back into his jacket, against his chest, next to where hope was settled, next to the heartbeat that had carried both of them through 4 miles of desert. "Okay," Noah said. "Just that, okay." The same word he'd used before, with the same quality, the word of a person who has received something real and let it fully land. Then from across the lot, Val's voice, "Caleb," not urgent, but pointed. He crossed to her. She showed him her phone. The forum post had now been shared 1,100 times. There were comments from people across the country, from Texas and Ohio and Oregon and Florida, from people who had never met a Hell's Angel, and people who were in the community, and people who were neither, all of them saying some version of the same thing, that they had needed to read this today, that they had forgotten this was possible, that they were going to call someone they hadn't called, or stop for something they'd been walking past, or say the thing they'd been not saying. "It's going," Val said simply. Caleb read a few of the comments. He read them the way Rachel had said Thomas read things that mattered, with his whole face. "Good," he said. "The charity organization director called again," Val said. "She wants to know if the Bennetts would be willing to attend the charity event tomorrow. As guests." She saw the posts. "She thinks ask them," Caleb said. Val looked at him. "I thought you'd want to be the one to ask." "Noah should decide," Caleb said. "Not because someone is asking him, on his own terms." Val took that and went. She asked Noah, and Noah looked at his mother, and his mother looked at Hope. And then Noah said, "Can the dog come?" Val relayed this to the phone. She listened. She looked at Noah. "The director says," and again I'm quoting, "the dog is the whole reason any of us would want to be there. The dog is the guest of honor." Noah looked at Hope. Hope looked back at him with her clear, opinionated eyes. "Okay," Noah said, "we'll come." The afternoon was tipping toward evening now. The light had changed in the way Nevada light changed at the end of the day, going gold, and then deeper, the color of something that knew it was almost done and was being generous about it. The heat was still real, but had lost its aggression. The parking lot had settled into the long, contented quiet of a gathering that has no reason to end and has stopped pretending it's about to. Someone had found speakers, somewhere small, tinny, improbable, and someone had connected a phone to them, and music was moving quietly across the lot. Nothing dramatic, something that fit, the kind of music you put on when you want sound to exist without demanding attention. Danny finished the chain on the bike he'd been working on and cleaned his hands and came to sit near Caleb and Noah without being invited, because Danny's social operating system did not include a function for feeling unwelcome. "I've been thinking," Danny said. "About what?" Caleb said. "About the truck," Danny said. He looked at Noah. I fixed what broke. But there are about 4 other things that are going to break soon. That truck has not been maintained the way it should be, and before you take it on the road again, someone needs to go through it properly. Noah looked at Danny with the expression of a mechanic hearing another mechanic accurately diagnose something. I know, he said. We haven't had the money for parts. I have parts, Danny said. He said it the way Danny said most things directly without drama in the voice of a man who has made a decision and is informing you of it. In storage in Boulder City, 40 miles from here. I can call ahead. We can take the truck through before you get on the highway to Las Vegas. Danny. It's not charity, Danny said with exactly the same precision Caleb had used hours ago. I have parts that are going to sit in storage and become useless. You have a truck that needs them. The math is simple. Noah looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at the middle distance with the carefully neutral expression of a man who had absolutely not anticipated this and was absolutely not surprised by it. The math is simple, Caleb confirmed. Noah turned back to Danny. He held the man's gaze for a moment, this broad, matter-of-fact, slightly grease-stained man who had driven 41 minutes out into the Nevada heat to fix a stranger's engine and had apparently not considered that sufficient. Thank you, Noah said, simply, without qualification. Danny nodded. He reached over and scratched Hope behind one ear with the careful, practiced gesture of a man who had dogs and knew how to handle them. Hope permitted this with the evaluative dignity of a creature deciding whether a person has earned familiarity. Apparently, Danny passed. She turned into his hand. Danny looked at her for a moment. His face, which was not a face given to softness, did something that was not quite soft, but was adjacent to it. Good dog, he said. The best dog, Noah said. She's going to be trouble, Danny said approvingly. The best kind, Noah agreed. And Caleb Walker, sitting in the late afternoon light of a Nevada gas station parking lot with Thomas Bennett's journal in his memory and his son's name in his chest and 300 people around him who had chosen to stay, Caleb Walker let himself feel all of it. Let it move through him without building a wall to stop it. Let it be what it was: a good day, a hard day, a day that had reached into the part of him that had been going dark for 3 years and turned something back on. Not fixed. He would not pretend it was fixed. Grief was not something that got fixed. He had learned that at significant cost and would not dishonor the lesson by pretending otherwise. But changed, shifted, made room for something alongside itself. The way a road makes room for everything. The broken down trucks and the running engines, the people asking for help and the people stopping to give it, the ones who walked away and the ones who didn't, all of it moving together in the same direction under the same sun toward whatever was waiting at the far end of the distance. He thought about calling Sandra tonight. He thought he would. I thought about what he would say. Not the details of the afternoon, not the story, but the thing underneath it, the thing the afternoon had made clear. That he was still here, that he was finding his way back, that the road was still giving him things and he was starting to pay attention again. He thought that would be enough to start. It was enough to start. Outside on the highway, a single car passed heading west toward Las Vegas, toward wherever it was going in the gold and deepening light. It passed without stopping. It had no reason to stop. It was just a car on a road headed somewhere, unaware of the gas station and the 300 bikes and the family and the puppy and the journal and all the weight and warmth of an afternoon that had become something none of its participants had seen coming. The car passed. The sound of it faded. The lot stayed where it was, and nobody moved. The decision to leave did not come all at once. It came the way most real decisions come, gradually. Then suddenly, the way the light had been changing all afternoon, without anyone marking the exact moment it became evening. It was Caleb who felt it first. Not a restlessness, nothing as simple as that. More like the particular awareness of a moment that has completed itself. The sense that everything this afternoon had needed to be had been said, and everything that had needed to happen had happened, and now the road was waiting with the patient authority it always carried, and it was time. He stood. That was all he did, just stood. And within 2 minutes, without a word from anyone, the lot began its slow, instinctive reorganization. Riders finished conversations at natural stopping points. Coffee cups were disposed of. Jackets were zipped. The specific sounds of 300 people orienting themselves toward departure, the small, purposeful movements of people who know how to leave moved through the gas station like a tide going out. Noah noticed it. He was sitting with Rachel and Hope, and he looked up and he watched it happen, and something in his face went through a complicated sequence that he didn't fully control. The afternoon had made him less guarded than he usually was. All of it had stripped something back, the walking and the fear and the crying and the receiving and the giving. And what was underneath was simply a 22-year-old who had walked 4 miles towards strangers because there was nowhere else to go and had found inexplicably everything. He stood up. He went to Caleb. "You're leaving," Noah said. "We have somewhere to be tomorrow morning," Caleb said. "And you have somewhere to be tonight." He looked at Noah steadily. "Your aunt is waiting." Noah nodded. He knew this. He had known it for the last hour, had been holding it alongside everything else. The awareness that Las Vegas was still ahead of them, that Linda was in a house somewhere in that city with a room prepared and a phone that had been ringing all afternoon, that the road between here and there still needed to be driven. "The truck is ready," Noah said. Danny had confirmed this an hour ago after a final walkthrough that had lasted 40 minutes and had involved Danny periodically making sounds of quiet professional displeasure that Noah recognized intimately because they were the same sounds his father had made when confronting other people's deferred maintenance. "The truck is ready," Caleb confirmed. They stood for a moment, two people at the end of something trying to find the right words for it and discovering, as people always discover at these moments, that the right words don't exist. That language has a ceiling, and some things press against that ceiling from below, and the best you can do is acknowledge it. "I'm going to call Ray in Las Vegas tomorrow," Caleb said. "The garage owner I mentioned. I'll tell him to expect you sometime this week." "You don't have to do that immediately," Noah said. "I know I don't," Caleb said. "I want to." Noah held his gaze. He had stopped arguing with the things Caleb wanted to do. He had gotten better at that over the course of 6 hours, which was, he would later reflect, one of the most useful things the afternoon had taught him. That receiving gracefully was its own form of generosity. That letting someone give was the other half of the gift. "Okay," Noah said. Then Caleb reached into his jacket and brought out a card. Plain, without much on it, a name, a phone number, nothing else. He held it out. "That's my number," he said. "Not for anything specific. Just if the road gets hard." He paused. "It gets hard sometimes." Noah took the card. He looked at it. He looked at Caleb. "Does it get easier?" Caleb thought about 3 years of not calling anyone. He thought about empty being worse than sad. He thought about what he was planning to say to Sandra tonight and what he was planning to do differently starting tomorrow, and the uncertain but real feeling that something had shifted in him today that was not going back. "It gets different," Caleb said, "and different is enough. Different means you're still moving." Noah put the card in his jacket pocket. Next to the journal, he pressed his hand flat against his chest for a moment, not dramatically, just registering what was there. His father's words, Caleb's number, Hope's warmth against his shirt. Everything that mattered carried close. Rachel appeared at Noah's side. She had Hope in her arms, and she looked at Caleb with the clear-eyed directness she'd had since the first moment she stepped out of that truck, a woman who had been through enough not to waste time with indirection. "I'm going to say something, and I need you to just accept it," she said. "All right," Caleb said. "You are a good man," Rachel said. "Not because of today. Today just showed it. You were already this. Whatever you've been going through, whatever you've been telling yourself about who you are and what you've lost and whether it's worth still caring." She stopped. She held his gaze. "You were wrong about yourself. I can see it clearly because I'm on the outside." She shifted Hope slightly in her arms. Thomas would have seen it too. He had a gift for it. Caleb did not look away. He did not deflect it. He did not diminish it. He let it land. He stood in the late Nevada light, and he let Rachel Bennett's words find the place they were aimed at, the part of him that had been arguing against itself for 3 years, the part that had decided that grief was the truest thing and everything else was noise, and he let them sit there solid and real and not going anywhere. "Thank you," he said. His voice was not entirely steady. He did not apologize for that. Rachel nodded once. She looked at Hope. "She's going to need a good vet in Las Vegas," she said, shifting to the practical, with the efficiency of a woman who processes emotion by doing the next necessary thing. "Jeannie gave me names." "Jeannie gave everyone names," Caleb said. "She doesn't trust anyone's ability to find a vet without her specific input." "She's right not to," Rachel said. Then Jeannie herself appeared because Jeannie had ears everywhere and had heard her name. She produced from somewhere a small kit, bandaging materials, antiseptic written instructions in her precise handwriting, and pressed it into Rachel's free hand with the authority of someone who has made peace with the fact that most people will not follow medical instructions correctly, but is going to provide them anyway. Daily, Jeannie said. The leg, daily until you see the vet. Daily, Rachel agreed. And if she stops eating, I call you, Rachel said. She held up the number Jeannie had already given her, written on a piece of paper that had appeared from the same mysterious source as the kit. I have your number. Jeannie looked at Hope. Hope looked at Jeannie with polite tolerance. She's going to be fine, Jeannie said to Noah this time because she understood that Noah was the one who needed to hear it. She's already more than fine. She's going to be a lot of dog. I know, Noah said. He was smiling, fully smiling, without the careful management of it he'd been doing most of the afternoon. I can already tell. Good, Jeannie said. She turned and walked back toward her bike without ceremony, which was entirely consistent with how she had operated all afternoon, present when needed, absent when not, without any apparent need for acknowledgement. She was the kind of person who did everything and required nothing, which was its own rare form of strength. Danny came last. He came with his keys in his hand and grease still on his knuckles that he hadn't entirely gotten off, and a look on his face that was as close to sentimental as Danny's face ever got, which meant it was technically neutral, but with warmth detectable in the eyes, if you knew where to look. He stood in front of Noah. He looked at the truck. He looked back at Noah. You hear anything from that engine that concerns you, he said. You pull over. Don't push through it. I know, Noah said. I know you know, Danny said. I'm saying it anyway, because mechanics always think, they can push through it. My dad used to say the same thing. Danny looked at him for a moment. Smart man, he said. And then before Noah could respond, he stuck out his hand. Noah shook it. Danny's grip was predictably significant. He held it for an extra beat, just one, just enough, and then let go and walked away back toward his bike without looking back. Noah watched him go. Marcus found him next, a hand on his shoulder, brief and solid, the kind of contact that communicates everything it needs to in under 2 seconds. Safe drive, Marcus said, and get your mother inside before the temperature drops. He glanced at Rachel. Your blood pressure doesn't love cold transitions. Rachel looked at him with the expression of a woman who has received enough medical commentary for one afternoon. Thank you, Marcus. I'm right, Marcus said pleasantly. I know you are, Rachel said equally pleasantly. Thank you. Marcus smiled, the real one, not the professional one, and went. The crowd was thinning, not gone, not yet, but thinning. The sounds of engines starting had begun that low building rumble that was Caleb always thought one of the most honest sounds in the world. Engines were not complicated. They either ran or they didn't. They told you immediately with complete candor what was happening inside them. I thought about that. He thought about Jacob, who had loved that about bikes, the honesty of them. He thought about what he was going to say to Sandra tonight, and he thought that it would sound something like an engine starting, something that had been quiet for too long finally running again. He thought he was ready for it. Val appeared at his elbow, already helmeted, already positioned toward departure. Ready, she said. Almost, he said. He looked at Noah one more time. Noah was holding Hope in both hands, now the same way he had held her when he'd first opened his jacket, like something worth protecting, like something that had chosen him. His mother was beside him, her hand on his arm, and the two of them were watching the crowd of departing riders with an expression that was the same on both their faces, the expression of people who have been changed by something and are just beginning to understand the dimensions of the change. Caleb walked to Noah. I didn't have any new words. Everything had been said. What remained was just the moment itself, the end of an afternoon that had become something neither of them had language sufficient for. He put his hand on Noah's shoulder. Brief, solid, the same way Marcus had done it, because some things are communicated that way through contact, through presence, through the simple physical fact of one person acknowledging another. Noah looked at him. Your dad was right about you, Caleb said. Noah's jaw tightened. He held it together. He had been holding it together all afternoon with impressive consistency, and he was not about to stop now. But it cost him something visible, and he didn't pretend it didn't. You were right about your dad too, he said. He was the best man you never met. Caleb looked at him for one more long moment. Then he nodded. He released Noah's shoulder. He turned toward his bike. He had taken 3 steps when Noah called after him. Caleb, he turned. Noah held up the journal. He didn't say anything. He just held it up, his father's handwriting on the cover. Caleb's initials on the last written page, the whole collected weight of what one man's life had meant and where it had traveled. Caleb looked at it. He understood. He raised one hand. Then he turned and walked to his bike, and he put on his helmet, and he started the engine, and it ran clean and immediate and honest, the way engines do when they've been properly cared for. And he pulled out of the Rattlesnake Junction gas station and onto Route 93 heading west. And 300 bikes followed him, and the sound of it was enormous and then diminishing and then gone. Noah stood in the empty-ish lot, a few cars, the gas station attendant, who had watched all of this from behind his counter, with the dazed expression of a man whose Tuesday had departed significantly from his expectations and held hope and watched the highway until there was nothing left to see. Then Rachel put her hand on his back. "Las Vegas," she said. "Las Vegas," he agreed. He opened the truck's passenger door for her. He went around to the driver's side. He started the engine. It caught cleanly. Danny's work holding exactly as promised, and he sat for a moment with his hands on the wheel before he pulled out. He thought about his father. I thought about New Mexico and a highway shoulder and a group of strangers in leather who had stopped and fixed a truck and ridden away without asking for anything. He thought about a man who had come home from that highway and written in a journal and raised a son on the lesson of it, who had died without knowing how far the lesson would travel or what it would do when it arrived. He thought, "Dad, you should have seen today." Then he thought he did see it. He sent me here. He put the words in my pocket and sent me here, and everything that happened because of something he wrote when I was 14 years old. And that is the most him thing that has ever happened in my entire life. He put the truck in gear. "Noah," Rachel said. "Yeah, your dad would be very proud of you today." He did not answer immediately. He pulled out onto Route 93 heading west into the last of the Nevada light, and he felt Hope shift against his leg, where she had settled on the bench seat between him and his mother. And he felt the journal in his jacket pocket against his chest, and he felt Caleb's card beside it, and he drove. "I know," he said finally. His voice was quiet and even and completely certain. "I know he would." 3 weeks later, David's article ran in 6 regional publications and was picked up nationally within 48 hours. The headline was simple because David had learned from an afternoon in Nevada that the simple ones were always the most true. 300 strangers became a family because one young man stopped. The Forum Post had reached 4,000 shares by the time the article published. They reached 40,000 by the end of the week. Comments came from people in every state, people who said they had read it on bad days, people who said it had made them call someone. They'd been not calling people who said it had reminded them of something they'd been forgetting. Noah started work at Ray's garage in Las Vegas 11 days after the afternoon at Rattlesnake Junction. Ray had called Caleb back within 2 hours of Caleb's message and said, "If he's the kid from the Forum Post, I already know he's got the job. I just need him to show up." Noah showed up. He was good at the work, his father's son, in every way that mattered, and within a month, Ray had told him he was the best hire he'd made in 5 years, which Noah took seriously and did not let make him complacent because his father had taught him that the moment you stopped paying attention was the moment things started going wrong. Rachel's medication situation stabilized with the help of Linda's insurance coverage and a doctor in Las Vegas who specialized in exactly her condition. She and Linda spent the first week having conversations they had been deferring for 3 years, hard ones. Necessary ones, the kind that leave you lighter on the other side of them. Hope's leg healed clean exactly as Jeannie had predicted. She became, as Danny had promised, a lot of dog curious, opinionated, absolutely certain of her position in the household, which was central. She slept against Noah's chest every night. She had decided this in the truck on the way to Las Vegas and had not revisited the decision since. Caleb called Sandra the night of the charity event. The conversation lasted 2 hours. He told her about Jacob, not the way he'd been telling it for 3 years as a thing to be managed and contained, but the way Thomas Bennett had written in his journal, with the full weight of love and loss without apology, without the armor. Sandra had listened for a long time before she spoke. When she spoke, she said, "I've been waiting for you to come back, Caleb." He said, "I know, I'm sorry it took this long." She said, "Don't be sorry, just come back." He said, "I'm trying." She said, "That's enough, trying is enough." I went to see her the following month. He brought Thomas Bennett's journal. He showed her the entry about New Mexico and Caleb's own initials on the last written page. And Sandra read it the way Marie had always read things that mattered, slowly, completely, without rushing toward the end. She looked up. You gave him back his father, she said. His father gave him himself, Caleb said. I just confirmed it. Sandra looked at him for a long moment. She said, Marie would have loved that kid. Yeah, Caleb said. Yeah, she would have. He thought about Jacob. He thought you would have loved him too. You would have gotten on your bike and you would have ridden out into the desert without being asked, and you would have fixed whatever needed fixing, and you would have ridden back laughing. You would have been exactly who you were. You would have been everything. He held that thought. He let it hurt. He let it be exactly what it was, the permanent, clean, honest grief of a father who had lost his son, carried openly without armor. Because empty was worse than sad, and the only way through was to keep feeling it, and keep moving, and keep paying attention to what the road gave back. He kept moving, because that was what you did. Because the road kept going, and it kept giving things, strangers and journals, and injured puppies and afternoons that became something no one had planned, and the only way to receive any of it was to stay on it, to keep going, to look up from the grief, not to escape it, but to see what else was there. There was always something else there. Thomas Bennett had written it for a 14-year-old boy, but it belonged to everyone who had ever stood at the edge of walking away and chosen differently. The world has enough people who walk away. Be the person who stops. Noah Bennett was 22 years old and he worked in a garage in Las Vegas, and he had a dog named Hope who slept against his heart, and he carried his father's journal in his jacket, and every morning when he started his truck, Danny's repairs, holding clean and true, he thought about a Tuesday afternoon in Nevada when everything had been broken and everything had been fixed and everything had been changed by the single irreversible fact of not walking past a ditch on the side of the road. He had stopped. Everything else had followed from that. Everything always follows from that.